Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Inherited Discord's Chaotic Powers? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Disclaimer: I don't own My Hero Academia. All rights for it belong to Kohei Horikoshi. I also don't own My Little Pony. The chaos begins. Discord sat on his throne as he laughed looking at the chaos around him. It was truly amazing. Rabbits with long legs running in groups, flying pigs, floating homes, you name any act of chaos that you can think of, and Discord has done it. Chaos is refreshing to the soul. An amalgamation of creatures said while smiling. He had the head of a horse, one antler on the right side, a horn on his left side, the right arm of a lion, and the left arm of an eagle. His left leg was that of a goat while the right was that of a reptile. He also had the body of a snake, the wing of a bat, and also a Pegasus wing, and finally a dragon tail. He then filled a cup with soda coming from a cloud. He looked in the distance and saw 6 shadows approach. He sighed as he knew it was the troublesome ponies that he had defeated before coming for more. "What do you want this time?" Discord asked as he drank the glass and threw the solidified soda, causing it to explode. The ponies looked at him and said, "We're here to defeat you, Discord, and send you back to your prison." He looked at them briefly before laughing out loud. He looked at them again and realized that they were serious. He then said, "You want to defeat me, but with what? Friendship?" He then split his body into pieces as they rotated around them, and said, "Please, you can't. I destroyed your friendship once, and I can destroy it again." He then sat upon his throne as he said, "You know what? Might as well be done with it." He looked at them using his magic to grab their necklaces that contain the elements of harmony. His enemy. "Give me the hardest hit you have." The ponies then began to float in the air as they began to glow, each with a different color. Discord looked at them and knew he was in trouble. At the time this happened, he was trapped in a stone statue never to be seen again. In a moment of what can be called desperation, he created another version of himself and used his power of chaos to slow time in his world, so his version could find a new where his body could inhabit someone, so he could escape this place, and preferably not be turned into stone once again. The version then looked at the slowed down time, and said, "I truly loved this world." He then shrugged and said, "Well, it's time for exploration." The other version of Discord began to swim through the multiverse, trying to find a world where his standards are met, but also he can have some fun. He began looking through one after one, till one caught his attention. "Oh, let me see here." He looked at a world where people find weird creatures and train them. He was excited about it but frowned when he saw most relationships with those creatures are mostly forged through friendship. He stuck out his tongue as he said, "Next." He then began to continue flipping through worlds till he saw another one. It was really interesting. There were kids with monsters that somehow evolved, fused, merged, and many more with some sort of device. He was about to go and possess someone but stopped as he saw that this world was also plagued with friendship. He sighed as he said, "Another waste of potential." He then flicked through worlds and was beginning to get disappointed moment after moment. Every interesting world he came across was plagued by the same trouble he had in his world: friendship. He looked back at his world and saw that his legs were slowly turning into stone. He then began scrolling through the universes to find one that suited his standards, or at least his criteria. He then spotted a very interesting universe, one where creatures known as humans evolved powers similar to the ponies. While it wasn't magic, it sure was amazing. He was about to go possess the strongest person there just on principle but stopped him. Sure, he was a god, but too much power could cause the body to be destroyed. He then smiled as he found his perfect target. A small boy was sleeping peacefully, and he could feel that no power was emanating from him. So he then quickly latched onto the boy. He couldn't help but giggle as the boy began to fight him using whatever little well he had. Discord smiled as he said to the child in his mind, "Try as you wish, but in the end, your body is as good as mine." Then he felt his body growing weak by the second. His powers were being absorbed by the boy, and he was being SE too. He looked back into his world and he saw a horrifying sight. The reason he was being weakened was due to his original self being petrified into rock. He screamed in despair as he began to fade. No, I was supposed to take control of you, not the opposite way around. The Lord of Chaos was then shoved into the child's subconscious as his original self was now sealed in stone. The child then began to giggle in his dream as his mother came into his room and said, "Oh, Izuku, you're such a wonderful baby boy. I just hope you have a wonderful future ahead of you." "All men are not born equal," was a phrase Izuku learned the hard way. Ever since that day, he went to the Quirk doctor. His dream was ruined and shattered into a million pieces. He frowned as the memory hit him. A young Izuku was bouncing up and down with his mother sitting beside him and driving the car to the hospital. He was excited that he was going to get his quirk today. He looked at his mom and said, "Come on, mommy, drive faster. I want to see what quirk I have." His mother smiled at his excitement and said, "Calm down, Izuku. We're here." His mother said as she stopped in front of the hospital and stopped the car. The mother then proceeded to grab Izuku's hand and take him to see the quirk doctor. They both walked to a waiting room and sat, or rather Inko sat while her son bounced around the room playing with other children. She didn't get to dwell on the details as the receptionist announced, "The Midoriya family, please enter the doctor's room." The family then entered the room and went to the doctor who said, "Are you here to get your quirk checked?" The boy smiled as he nodded his head repeatedly. The doctor then pulled out a syringe, took a blood sample from Izuku, and also led the little boy to the X-ray room and took his X-ray. The boy next to his mom as he jumped excitedly. The doctor then came into the room and asked his mother, "Ma'am, what is your quirk exactly?" The woman blinked as she answered him, "Well, my quirk is a simple attraction quirk. Wow. I can attract any small object. My husband's quirk is fire breathing." She then took a distressed look as she asked, "Why did you ask, doctor? Is there something wrong with my Izuku?" "Well, ma'am, you see, there are certain cases where quirks tend to skip a generation, or the quirk bloodline is so weak that the individual doesn't manifest at all." The doctor then proceeded to show the woman an X-ray of Izuku's left foot and said, "You see, through version studies and research, we were able to find that children with no extra joint on their pinky toe will have a higher chance of manifesting a quirk, but..." He pointed at the boy's X-ray saying, "In this picture you can see that your son have this extra joint." Inko then asked, "What are you saying, doctor?" He then looked at her and said, "Your son won't have a quirk." The doctor then looked at Izuku and told him, "Sorry kid, but you won't be able to be a hero if you're thinking about that. Better start looking for new careers." Izuku then let go of his All Might figure as the sad reality began to sink in. He looked at his mother, who was distraught as he was, and asked the doctor, "Are you sure that he won't be able to manifest a quirk on his own?" "100%, ma'am, but there is." The doctor stopped as he shook his head. "No, forget about that. You won't accept anyway." What is it?" the woman asked with urgency in her voice. "Have you ever heard of a quirk stabilizer?" The doctor asked the woman, who was now intrigued as to where the doctor was going at. She shook her head as a response. The doctor frowned as he thought that those things should be seriously taught in schools. "Are you sure, ma'am? I mean, they should have taught you that in school." But just like the previous time, the woman shook her head. "Anyway," the doctor massaged his temples as he said, "a quirk stabilizer is something that is usually found within quirkless people. It helps them accept quirks that are transferred to them from an outside quirk, and it can work on any quirk, whether it was emitter, transformation, or mutant." The woman clapped her hands as she said, "Now, that's extremely wonderful. So how can we do it?" She knew there must be a catch to such a thing. Well, the catch is that the procedure to enact this is a seriously dangerous operation where the individual is put through version treatments before a certain quirk factor is entered into his bloodstream, mixing with his own, and making a new mutation of the quirk that was introduced. The man said with a wobbly smile, but then added, "But as a bounce, we know that the endgame of this is that the individual will gain a quirk." The mother felt panic traveling through her body as she hugged her son and said, "And what is the danger level of this operation, if I may ask?" Perhaps if the chances of its success were high enough, then she would allow Izuku to undergo it and gain a quirk. The doctor scratched the back of his head and said, well, out of 1,000 people who had it, only 10 people were reported to have it succeed or go through it without having any permanent side effects that would cause them to hate to be alive as a whole. The mother paled as she imagined her son going through painful treatments and a dangerous Quirk implant procedure only to receive nothing but pain in the end or death. The woman then looked at her son's face, which was full of hope that he may have a Quirk and be able to fulfill his dream of being a hero. She looked at the doctor with guilt filling her insides. She thought about Izuku's dreams as she told herself that if Izuku ever asked her if he could be a hero, she would say that he would become one regardless of a Quirk or not. No thank you, doctor. I won't risk my Izuku's life in an operation where success isn't 100%. She then stood up as the doctor said, I understand, ma'am, but if you ever think about it, call me, I can pull a few favors from the medical community. The woman nodded as she exited the room, pulling a nearly catatonic Izuku after her. The ride to their home was silent, but she hoped that Izuku would understand one day that what she did there was for his best. When they arrived, she said to Izuku, Sweetie, dinner will be ready in 30 minutes. How about you go to your room and watch some hero videos while I finish it? The boy nodded numbly as he walked up to his room. The mother frowned as she couldn't fault him for his state right now. People in today's society look down on quirkless people, treating them less than dirt. She could only imagine what kind of pain and heartbreak her son was going through, but she was determined to help him through it and do what any mother would. When she finished the dinner, she shouted, Izuku, dinner's ready. She waited for a bit, but nothing came from her son. She then shouted again, Izuku, dinner's ready. Again nothing but silence. She walked up to his room, only to see the boy sitting in front of the computer screen crying his eyes out. The boy sat watching his favorite All Might video. He then slowly turned his chair to face her as he asked, Mom, do you think I can still be a hero? The mother looked at her son and was about to say yes, but she stopped. She knew that heroes died every day, and they were with quirks. Sure, some heroes fought quirkless, but they still had something up her sleeve to aid them. She then began to imagine her son dying because he became a hero fighting people who were stronger than he was. She then came down beside her son, remembering the promise that she said to herself during the doctor's appointment that she would protect his dreams no matter what, but it was easier said than done. She couldn't just offer her son to death just to let him follow a very hard dream. The boy looked at her with hope in his eyes, as he knew that his mother would believe in his dreams no matter what. The mother then hugged him as she cried herself, saying, I'm sorry, Izuku. Izuku just sat there silently as he said in his head, Mom, this isn't what I wanted to hear. Both the mother and son duo continued to cry till Izuku cried himself to sleep, but during his sleep, he had a weird dream. He saw a weird creature that was a bunch of mixed creatures. The creature looked at him and slapped his forehead as he said, Get a grip on yourself. You don't need this quirk thing as long as you have the element of chaos on your side. The boy then woke from his sleep as he was breathing heavily. His day was terrible and he just had a very weird dream. He only hoped tomorrow would be better, but something told him it wouldn't. The next day came, and Izuku's mom was packing his stuff to take him to school. She only hoped her son wouldn't have a hard time there, but she was sure that with his best friend there he wouldn't have too much of a bad time there. She walked up to his room and knocked on his door saying, Izuku, come on. It's time to go to school. She waited for a moment before she knocked again, but got no answer. The mother then opened the door only to see her son sitting in the corner of the room hugging his knees, and still in his pajamas. The woman frowned as she said, Come on, Izuku, don't be like that. The boy looked at her and said, But I don't want to go to school. Everyone is going to make fun of me. The woman then smiled as she said, Izuku, would All Might be afraid of people making fun of him? She then saw the boy start thinking, as he tried to come to a solution for his situation. He finally sighed as he said, No, Mommy. Good, so let's pack your stuff so we can go to school. The boy sighed as he nodded his head. At the school, Izuku sat alone with himself, as he contemplated whether he should tell his friends that he is quirkless. He knew that Kaken would help him, but at the same time, his best friend had recently become more aggressive toward him. He sighed as he couldn't think of anything. He then saw someone approach him. He looked only to see an ashen blonde-haired boy. He had crimson red eyes and was popping small explosions from his hands. This was Kaken, better known as Katsuki Bakugo. The boy smiled at Izuku as he said, "So Izuku, what is your quirk?" Izuku froze as he tried to think of a way to avoid this, but gulped as he knew that his best friend was going to find out either sooner or later, so he said in a very quiet voice, "I'm quirkless." The other boy frowned as he couldn't hear what Izuku said. He then said, "Speak Izuku, I can't hear you." The boy then said, "I'm quirkless." Katsuki then stood there dumbfounded. Quirkless means he doesn't have a quirk, so he's weak, pathetic, and useless. So he asked, "So you're quirkless?" The green-haired boy then said, "Yes, I'm quirkless, but don't worry, I'm still going to be a hero like we promised." He was cut off as the other boy laughed at him. Izuku looked at him and said, "Kaken, why are you laughing at me?" The blonde-haired boy then said, "You want to be a hero. You're quirkless. You're nothing but a Deku. You can never be a hero." Izuku looked at him and said, "What about our promise, Kaken?" The boy looked at him with a sneer, "You're truly worthless, Deku, and you think that you can be a hero. That's never going to happen. Do you know why?" The smaller boy shook his head as the bigger one popped an explosion in his face as he said, "Because you're quirkless and quirkless people are nothing." "But I can be the first quirkless hero," Izuku said, but was startled by an explosion in the face as he looked at the boy. The boy then scoffed. Katsuki then said, "Keep dreaming. You'll never be a hero, and if you ever did you'll be nothing but a failure." The boy walked away but stopped as he turned again to Izuku and said, "From now on, you'll be known as Deku. A name worthy of a failure like you." As the boy left Izuku behind, Izuku couldn't help but feel betrayed at how easily his best friend left him behind. He looked at his friend and said, "I'll show them. I'll become a hero just like All Might." From that day forward, Izuku's life took a turn for the worse as everyone began to bully him. He would usually return to his home with bruises, cuts, and scraps, but he never told his mom to not worry about him. One day, he went to the park to play and saw something that he couldn't stand for. He saw Bakugo bullying a child, went up to him and said, "Kaken, why are bullying him?" The blonde boy then said, "Move aside, Deku. This is between me and this extra." He thought he could say that my quirk isn't that impressive, so he must pay. Although they weren't friends anymore, Bakugo didn't harass Izuku like the others. He merely stuck to calling him names and allowing him to still follow him, but even that was revoked when Izuku tried to help him from the river. "But you can't just hurt him, Kaken. That's just wrong," Izuku said as he still stood between both boys. Bakugo and his two cronies who were with him began to grow very agitated. Bakugo then said, "Move aside, Deku." "No, I won't let you hurt him. Heroes don't hurt other people." The blonde boy smiled evilly as he slammed his fist into his hand, causing a small pop sound to appear. He then looked at Izuku and said, "So you're planning to play hero, Deku?" The boy then looked at him with an evil stare. "Since you won't budge, why don't you fight us instead of this extra?" Izuku didn't have much time to think as the three rushed him and began to beat him up, and by the end of it he was left covered in burns. And as if to add insult to his injury, the boy that he helped days later began to bully him too in order to avoid being bullied himself. Wonderful, just wonderful. In addition, after that day, Bakugo began to join his beating, as he would train his quirk on him. It was painful, but he wouldn't let that stop him from being a hero, so the boy began to indulge in hero quirk analysis. He was able to dissect any quirk he came across, and he wrote down his notes in a notebook he always carried around with him. But one day during school something happened with Izuku. Although it wasn't something he would take a lot of notice to back then, it set a path for the future. It was a normal day at lunch, or at least as normal as it is for Izuku. He was sitting alone in the cafeteria eating his lunch as quietly as possible to avoid a second beating after his morning beating from Bakugo. For some reason, his mother still thinks that they are best friends, and he couldn't bring himself to tell her that he was bullying her because she saw Bakugo as another son of hers. Also, add to that, Izuku seemed to still think of Bakugo as a friend himself, and even Izuku just didn't want to ruin his mother's friendship with Bakugo's mom. He then picked up a glass cup of water and began to drink it as he looked at his surroundings. He saw that Bakugo just entered the cafeteria and began to pray to whatever entity out there that was hearing him that he wouldn't notice him, but to his surprise, Bakugo didn't come in his direction but instead was caught in the middle of a fight with another student. This by itself caused a huge food fight inside the place. The boy was lucky that he quickly hid under the table so he wouldn't be caught in the middle of the fire. But he sat under the table, he felt something weird with his body. It felt like some kind of energy, but he attributed it to his adrenaline and fear of being bullied. He then looked at the cup he was holding have turned from glass to plastic. He looked at it with an odd look as he asked himself, I swear you were just glass a moment ago. He then began to scratch his head in confusion but shrugged as he returned to his lunch. He only popped his head when the principal came in and left, given that if he saw him he would with no doubt try to pin it on him. However, Izuku just couldn't get this incident out of his mind, as it wasn't the first time it happened. He can remember other times from his childhood when he had objects only for them to disappear, change their state, begin floating away, or change their size slightly. When he usually told his mother, she usually attributed that to his imagination. He frowned as he walked to his class, and began to take notes about the new lesson he was having. However, deep in the subconscious, a voice yelled with desperation, "For the love of chaos, how can you be so smart yet so dumb at the same time? Geez, kid, I honestly thought you would realize that you have my powers by now. But I'll give him a break, he can't harvest chaos as I did. Everything will happen in due time." He then looked at the clock as he said again, "I hope I can get freed soon enough. It's torture being here." A couple of years went by and even with his counterpart's recent release from his stone prison, discord was still trapped within Izuku's subconscious. He sighed as he said, "Even though my original self is free now, I still can't emerge given that my powers merged with his body and are a part of him now. Heck, even I'm part of him now." He frowned as he realized that he was bumped down into an overrated training manual. He then looked through Izuku's eyes and saw something that made him yawn, "School again. Even though I'm stuck here and barely able to do anything and I'm bored, so how about the one how he to do the actual work?" He then saw the teacher enter, and the boy was so invested in his hero analysis for the future that his words were actually forming in midair. This earned Izuku in real life a yell from Bakugo, "Shut the hell up, nerd, I don't want to hear you speaking anymore." The boy flinched as he recoiled on himself as the entire class laughed at him as he nodded his head and said, "Yes, Kakin." Bakugo then yelled at him saying, "You dang shitty nerd, how many times do I have to tell you to never call me by that name ever again?" The smaller boy then slapped his hands over his mouth so he wouldn't make the already bad situation even worse than it already was. The teacher then said, "Midoriya, stop disturbing the class and stop picking a fight with Bakugo, or else you'll get detention today." The boy lowered his head as he said, "Sorry, sensei." The teacher then sneered at the boy as he said, "Don't let it happen again, got it?" The teacher then stood and said, "In other words, let's begin today's lesson. But before we begin that..." He then put a bunch of papers in front of his table as he continued, "Let's talk about your future careers." The students looked at him in silence, and he then threw the papers in the air as he said, "But how am I kidding? I know that you all want to be heroes." The students began to cheer as they used their quirks, but only 2 students were quiet the entire time, and one of them was Izuku as he didn't have any quirk to use in the first place. A voice then boomed through the entire classroom as Bakugo stood up and declared loudly for everyone to hear him, "Teacher, don't lump in with these losers. I'm going to be the next number hero and have all the power, money, and power. I'm going to be the best of the best." He then looked at his classmates and said, "Those losers will be lucky if they even manage to become some low-class hero who can't even hold their salt's worth." The other students began to yell at Bakugo, "What are you saying, Bakugo? Yeah, you're so full of yourself. Yeah, you can't just disregard us like this." Bakugo then yelled, "Shut up, you stupid idiots. I'm going to UA, while you will go to some second-rate hero school." The students then began to gasp as whispers began to emerge through the entire class talking about Bakugo's declaration. "UA? No way, that's too hard to try to. Yeah, I heard that their entrance rate is about 2%. Man, it's just too DMN hard." Bakugo then laughed as he said, Yeah, I'm going to UA, the only school that will expect the future number hero to graduate from. He then stood on the table as he posed saying, I aced the preliminary exams, and going to enter UA, and become the next number 1 hero. The teacher then looked at Izuku and smiled wickedly. He then lifted a paper as he said, Midoriya, didn't you sign up to UA too? Bakugo then froze as he looked at Izuku, and the entire class began to laugh at the green-haired boy who tried to melt into the ground. Deku signed up for UA. Are you insane? You're quirkless. What do you expect to do? Are seriously thinking you're going to be a hero? While all the other students began to laugh at Izuku, the boy lowered his head in sadness as this wasn't the first time his dreams were made fun of. He was also sure this wouldn't be the last time either. However, he was determined to become the first quirkless hero and prove to everyone that you don't need a quirk to actually be a hero. He was going a symbol just like All Might. While Izuku was thinking about his dream, Bakugo looked at him with an angry expression. So the loud blonde yelled, Deku, what do you think you're doing to UA? Are trying to compete with me? Quirkless losers aren't even allowed to enter the exams. The green-haired boy gulped knowing that if he gave the wrong answer, he would eventually get hurt, so trying to tread the waters carefully, he said, What? No, Kaken, I won't ever compete with you. I'm just following my dream like I always wanted to. Plus, they removed that rule from UA about banning quirkless people from joining the entrance exam. The blonde didn't seem to take this lightly as he thought this was some kind of declaration of war, so he yelled, Deku, are you looking down on me? You think you can be a hero, hell you can't even be a clown. The boy then slammed his hand, making an explosion on Izuku's desk saying, Don't even think about showing up to the entrance exam. Katsuki was about to do more, but he stopped when the teacher said, Bakugo, stop. I have a class to finish. The blonde boy then backed away, as Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. But he looked at Bakugo whose eyes said that this wasn't over, not by a fat chance. The green-haired boy then looked at the board and sighed, hoping to avoid any further problems. Back in Izuku's head, discord slapped his head. Ever since he was able to retain his ability to think, he was always tired of that infuriating sight of Bakugo beating his technical host. He saw this case way too many times. The bell will ring, Bakugo will attack the boy, and the boy will run home crying about how he's going to prove he is a hero. Come kid, work with me here. All you have to do is focus on all the chaotic energy around, and you'll be able to use. The former Lord of Chaos then tipped his chin as he said, Well, to some extent at least, but sitting and doing nothing won't help. He actually didn't like the way that the boy just sat and wished to be a hero, and didn't put some work into it. At least when he was the Lord of Chaos, he actually worked hard to destroy his enemies. It might have not been the best example for this case, but still, it worked. As the bell rang, Discord then lifted his hands, and opened them dramatically as he said, Oh, goody. He looked as he saw Bakugo-gun stand in front of the door, and added, Another beatdown to add to this never-ending list. As Izuku began to pack his stuff, he looked only to see Bakugo coming his way, and his goons following him. This alone set several warning signs across his head as he asked, Kaken, what do you want? I want you to pull out your application to UA, the boy demanded as clearly as day. What? But it's my dream to go to UA. The green-haired boy said. It's then that Bakugo took a deep breath and explained, You know that great heroes always show signs of greatest from their childhood. And I'm one of them, so hear me good and hear me well. You're going to pull out that application because I'm the only one from this backwater school who's going to make it into UA. The blonde boy finished explaining as he grabbed Izuku's shirt and threw him to the side of the room. To him, Izuku was worthless. The nerd going to UA would tarnish the reputation of his school, not that he gave a sheet, but if the school's reputation is tarnished as trash, then so is his. Izuku didn't know what to say, but he suddenly felt someone take his hero notebook from his bag, and looked to see Bakugo's cronies holding his work as he mocked him. What is this? A diary. Bakugo then took the book and looked at it as he read, Hero Analysis for the Future. He then looked at Izuku and said, So you still didn't finish this creepy stalker habit of yours. He then added, And how many times do I have to tell you that you won't ever be a hero? he said as he torched Izuku's notebook in explosions, causing the boy's eyes to widen as he saw his work all go to scrap while the blonde boy threw it to the fish down in the pond. The bullies then began to walk away, but Bakugo stopped as he turned to Izuku and said, "If you want a quirk that badly, I think there is a way." Izuku looked at him with hopeful eyes, but it didn't last for long as Katsuki spat out the following: "Go, and take a swan dive, and pray to have a quirk in the next life." He then began laughing as he finally left, leaving Izuku to his thoughts. Minutes later, the young boy was walking with his notebook in his hand as he said, "Stupid Kaken, what if I actually did it? How would he then be a hero?" The boy was busy talking to himself. He didn't notice a sludge-looking thing emerging from the sewers until it was too late. The thing then grabbed onto him and he said, "You're my hero, kid. Now stand still, it won't hurt a lot. It's only 45 seconds and you won't feel anything anymore." Izuku, refusing to do, asked himself as he struggled trying to free himself, "Is this how I die? But I didn't even become a hero." As the lack of oxygen began to cause him to black out, he could barely make out a new presence appearing, and then everything went black. Izuku then woke up as he felt someone smacking him repeatedly on the cheeks. He groggily opened his eyes only to be greeted by a huge man. He wore a white tank top and green pants. But what was most striking about him was his blonde hair, which had two protrusions standing upward in a V shape. He was the symbol of peace, all might. The boy marveled at the sight as he screamed, "All might." He then began to bow repetitively as the blonde hero laughed. But deep within Izuku, the Lord of Chaos pulled out his tongue and said, "You're lame." This act began to send out signals to the outside world that began to make the hero uncomfortable with the boy. But he had to endure it. The boy then went to grab his notebook wanting to have an autograph, only to be shocked that it was already signed, thanking the hero as he did so. The hero then attempted to jump to get away from the boy, but Izuku latched on to his feet. After some time, the hero landed on a building as he looked at the boy and scolded him, "Young man, I'll let you know that was very reckless of you." The boy looked down in shame as he said, "I know, but I have a lot of questions to ask. Please just hear out for a little bit." The hero then felt his limit nearing its end, so he said, "Quickly, young Midoriya, right?" The boy then nodded his head. The boy then as he asked, "Do you think that a quirkless person can become a hero?" he said as he bowed down with tears in his eyes. The hero was just there as he echoed lightly, "Quirkless, you say?" However, steam begins to erupt from him. Izuku, not noticing the hero's condition, then said, "Yes, I want to be a hero just like you. A hero who chases away bad guys with a smile." He then looked up only to see smoke emitting from a skinny blonde man, so the boy promptly yelled, "Where's All Might?" "Are you a villain?" the boy said as he backed away. The hero just sighed and shook his head as he said, "Boy, I'm All Might." He then spat out blood. After one long explanation, Izuku understood that All Might had a fight with a very strong villain 5 years ago that left him in this state after he received an injury that destroyed most of his insides. The hero then looked at the boy and said, "And as for your question, no, I don't think a quirkless person can be a hero. A hero must always be ready to put his life on the line. But don't feel bad, you can always be a cop. It's a fine profession. It's okay to dream, but be realistic." The hero then walked down the stairs as he closed the door of the roof of the building, leaving the boy staring into nothing as he felt his dreams get crushed. The boy then walked alone with his dreams broken, but he then heard a loud explosion. The boy went to the site of the sound. He then saw the villain that his idol caught trying to take someone hostage, with several heroes not attempting to do anything because they don't have the right quirk. The boy then saw the hostage. It was Kaken. He then realized that the villain must escape from All Might when he latched onto him. He then ran with several heroes trying to stop him. He was lost as he saw the chaos around him. He then saw something odd, some kind of waves in the air. He then grasped it and began to pull it towards him. Katsuki was not having a good day. He was being taken hostage by this shitty villain. He looked only to see Deku trying to save him. The boy then felt something begin to pull him, or he was rather feeling funny. For one moment the villain was holding the nest. He was beside Death Arms, one of the heroes on the scene. He looked only to see Deku focusing on the villain keeping in place. One question popped up as he asked himself, does Deku have a quirk? Izuku didn't know what he was doing, but he was doing it. First, he somehow managed to remove Kaken safely from the villain. Then he used telekinesis perhaps to stop the villain. He was struggling though, the heroes were just standing there not doing anything. Moments later, All Might appeared and defeated the villain. Izuku then fell on his butt as he asked himself, what just happened? Disclaimer, I don't own My Hero Academia. All rights for it belong to Kohei Horikoshi. I also don't own My Little Pony. The Chaos Spirit. Izuku looked around in confusion, unable to understand what he had just done. Did he manifest a quirk out of the air? No, that was impossible. The doctor told him he would never manifest a quirk, or maybe he did have one, but the doctor lied to put him in a quirk surgery for a quick buck. It was all confusing. He then looked around him, and it was utter pandemonium. He then saw All Might talking with the press about the Sludge villain. Inside him, discord slapped his forehead as he said, well, I guess I have to talk to him tonight to explain what actually happened, or else he won't be able to use it ever again. Izuku then was suddenly pulled to the side by the heroes who began scolding him. It was first Death Arms who said, what were you thinking, kid? You could have got hurt or worse. The hero then shook the boy as Kemui Woods came and said, now, no need to be so violent. I saw it on the boy's face. He was just panicked when he saw his friend in danger and helped him using his quirk. He didn't mean any harm. The wood hero then came closer and whispered to Izuku, if you want, I'll take in my agency for an internship when it's due time. Death Arms who heard that then yelled, hey, don't try and take him for yourself. I saw him first. The two heroes then began to bicker back and forth as Izuku still tried to understand what happened. Two heroes were fighting over him because he has a quirk. That was rather refreshing to say the least, but he was approached by Backdraft who gave him his hero card and told him, see you in the internships. This was seen by the two bickering heroes who yelled at the water hero, hey, get your own intern. The two then managed to SCK the water hero in their mini-brawl as they all discussed loudly who have the right to take Izuku under his wing but couldn't come to an agreement. On the side, Katsuki Bakugo was being tended to by a couple of pros, and some medics checking if he was fine, but what irked him the most was Deku. The nerd had a quirk but never bothered to tell him. Was he looking down on him the entire time? Did the nerd think he was so grand that he didn't need to tell him that he had a quirk? Did the nerd think he was so strong that he thought that he never had to use it against Bakugo or show it to him? But no, Deku was quirkless. He always was and always will be, but what happened? He then looked at Deku who looked just as confused as he was. He couldn't tell if he was being genuine or not, but Katsuki needed to correct something. He then saw the green-haired boy slowly stand up and walk away with confusion written all over his face, while the shitty heroes were still arguing over how we'll get the nerd for an internship. He then got up and followed the nerd to tell him something. Izuku started walking home with a million questions on his mind as he thought about what happened today. I just manifested a quirk, but how? I'm sure a late bloomer is usually about 6 or 8 years at max, and if we can stretch it by a miracle then 10 years old. But is this a quirk, or is it something else? The feeling I got was odd. It was like I can see a disturbance in the ether, but what was that? The boy never saw someone walking behind till the figure yelled, hey, Deku. The boy then turned around, fear itched on his face as he looked at Bakugo who was wearing the face of the devil as an expression. Do you want anything, Kaken? Zip it, nerd, the boy shouted, causing the smaller one to salute him like a soldier and stand still waiting to hear what the other one had to say. Listen here, you filthy piece of garbage. I didn't need your help today. Got it? I was saved by All Might, not you. The boy then began to walk forward, but stopped and said something, and don't you dare start looking down on me just causing you to have a quirk, got it? The boy then began to quickly nod his head as Bakugo then walked away saying, shitty Deku. Izuku then sighed as he said, he's right. I didn't need to help him today. I was just getting in the way. I guess I need to look. The boy didn't get to finish his sentence as a huge figure appeared from the alleyway skidding to a stop. He said, I am here. The boy was then startled out of his mind as the hero stood in front of him causing him to yell, what are you doing here? I thought you were still stuck with the press. The blonde hero then began to laugh at him as he said, My child, I represent justice, not sound bites. Do you know why? That's because I am all Mig. Belg. The hero then spat blood as he puffed back into his mini-form as Izuku became to call it small. Might. The terrified boy then said, Are you all right, All Might? Was he still sad that All Might causally steamrolled all over his dreams without giving it a second glance? Sure? Did he feel angry toward the hero? Well, he would be lying if he said no, but he understood where the hero was coming from. He only wanted to protect him, and if he didn't jump on All Might, the villain today would have never escaped from the hero. So then the boy bowed down and said, I'm sorry, All Might. If I didn't hang on to you, the villain would have never escaped. The hero then looked at him and said, My boy, first I'm fine and... The hero then adjusted his stand as he continued, Second, I came here to apologize. The stood there dumbfounded for a moment, not believing what he just heard. All Might was apologizing to him, but why? He then said, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? The hero then smiled and said again, I came here to apologize to you, my boy. The boy then looked at him as he said, But why? I mean, it was because of me that the villain managed to escape from you. I should be apologizing. The hero then said, While that is true, it was you today who was a true hero. If it weren't for your actions to save your friend, I would have been only an inflated balloon of muscles that can't even live up to his own ideals, and for that, my boy, I give you my thanks. The boy then blushed heavily as his hero was thanking him, so he said, It was no trouble, All Might, but I still feel bad about today. I got in your way and caused other heroes trouble. I wish I just wasn't that useless. The boy knew that he had a quirk now, but what good can it do if he didn't have the body to support it, or didn't have any idea about it? On the contrary, my boy, today, you were the personification of heroism. The man then smiled as she said, You, a quirkless, rose to the occasion while us pros were only standing in the background not knowing what to do. It was because of your actions that I was able to extend my buff form a little to save the day. He then looked at the boy and said, Tell me, when you rescued your friend, what happened? I don't know honestly. At first, I was watching, but then I felt my feet were walking on his own. And after that, it was just a blur. I honestly don't what I have even done after that. The hero's smile then widened as he said, You know that all the stories of the greatest heroes begin with a similar thing. They all say that their legs just walked on their own. The hero then pointed his finger at Izuku and said, You, young man, can also become a hero. The green-haired boy then fell to the ground as he cried his eyes out, finally having someone believe in his dreams. It was none other than his all-time favorite hero, All Might. It was really exciting to see the symbol of peace himself tell him that he can also be a hero. But then the hero added, And I also came here to give you an offer. The boy's ear then perked up. What is that offer that All Might was talking about? But first, before I tell you, I recall that you told me that you were quirkless, so what happened today? Izuku himself didn't know what to answer. He was still in shock from what happened before, and what is happening. He looked at his hand, and then looked at a trash can lid. He tried to move it and succeeded a little in lifting it, before becoming exhausted and letting it fall. Inside him, Discord yelled, What the heck was that? You have enough chaos energy in this world to last you for a decade. You're embarrassing me. The Lord then sat down and sighed, conjuring a to-do list and putting on it, long talk with the boy when he sleeps. Izuku then looked at Small Might and said, I don't know. For most of my life, I've been quirkless. He then began remembering small incidents such as glass turning into plastic, water moving around him, air solidifying in his hand, and snow turning into metal, but his mother always turned him down, telling him it was his imagination or some weird coincidence. There were some weird moments in my life where I thought I had a quirk, but my mom always said that it was just coincidence. He then began telling the hero what happened to him, greatly interesting the hero. Well, young Midoriya, I can't say I ever heard of such a quirk, but I can say that it is a strong one. Maybe yours required some kind of forced activation. It happened to some people around the world. The hero then shook his head and said, We'll talk about that later. But now, like I said before, I had an offer to you. Izuku then looked at him and nodded his head. All Might then said, "Young Midoriya, I want you to be my successor." An eerie silence then stretched as both looked at each other, Izuku clearly not understanding what was happening, while All Might just looked at him waiting for the young boy to process what he just heard. He can't actually blame the boy for his reaction, he had the same one when he met his master. Sensing that the awkward silence stretched good enough, the hero coughed in his fist as he said, "My boy, I understand that this might be a little overwhelming, but I think you're doing it a little." The boy then shook his head as he said, "I'm sorry, All Might, but it's just a little bit shocking that you want me as a successor. I mean, why me, while there are people with better quirks out there?" Inside his head, Discord stuck out his tongue saying, "Chaos is way better than quirks." All Might then nodded his head as he said, "I can see where you're coming from, but after saying your actions today, I deemed you worthy of becoming my successor and having my quirk." Another eerie silence stretched as All Might sighed again, but Izuku snapped out of it as he said, "You want me to take your quirk, is that even possible?" The hero smiled as he said, "Yes, I want you to take my quirk." He then asked the boy, "Do you know what my quirk is?" Izuku then put his fingers on his chin as he said, "Most people believe that it's some type of strength enhancement or augmentation type quirk." The hero smiled, "Well, that's not true. You see, anytime anybody asks or talks about my quirk on TV shows, I either crack a joke or change the subject entirely. My quirk is a special one. It's called one for all." Izuku looked at him with admiration as he echoed the words All Might said. The hero then continued explaining his quirk as his hand began to glow. It's a quirk that can be passed down from generation to generation, each generation strengthening even further. The hero then looked at the boy who was going into some sort of mumbling spree, "A quirk that can be passed down to others. That's practically unheard of, but this doesn't mean that it's impossible." The hero then said, "You kinda overthinking it." The hero then saw the boy continuing his spree, causing the hero to scream, "Stop nerding out." The boy then snapped out of it as he looked at the hero, and said while rubbing the back of his head, "Sorry." The hero then smiled, "No problem, it's overwhelming if you think about it." He then asked him again, "Do you want my awesome power or not?" The boy was about to say yes, but inside him, Discord's mind was running 100 miles an hour. He was afraid that the combination of those two powers will practically overwhelm the boy and destroy him. He then yelled, "Don't accept it. You'll die." The boy then flinched as he heard the voice, so he subconsciously said, "Am I hearing stuff?" Discord was shocked that the boy can hear him, but said, "No, you idiot, you're not going crazy, but that's a talk for a later time. Don't take the offer or else you'll die." Izuku didn't know what to do anymore since he was being offered an awesome power, but he listened to the voice in his head as he said, "I'm sorry, All Might, but no, I can't take it." "No, he's..." All Might stopped a little because he thought he heard the boy say no, so he said quietly, "Can you repeat that, my boy?" Izuku sighed. He was his hero offering him his power, but he couldn't take it. He didn't know why he listened in the first place, but something told him it would for the best if he listened to the voice in his head. He then repeated what he said, "Take it." The hero was shocked. He imagined that the boy will jump at the possibility of having his power, but he refused. The hero respected his decision, but he needed to know why he refused, so he asked, "Tell me, my boy, why did you refuse to take my power? I'm sure that if you have it, you could in the top of the rankings with no problem when you become a pro, aside from becoming the new symbol of peace." The boy looked at him as he contemplated an answer, but a question suddenly popped into his head. Did he really want his hero's quirk? All his life he wanted a quirk, but now he has one, so why take another? He looked at his hero and said, "I know it may shock that I refused, but all my life I wanted nothing but to have a power of my own, and now I have one, so it feels wrong to take your power knowing that out there is someone with my same condition or at least a weak quirk who wants to be a hero, so sorry but I can't take it." All Might smiled at the young man. He truly deserved one for all, but he respected his decision. The hero then buffed up as he said, "All right, young man, have it your way, but still with or with my quirk, your body needs training. I mean, look at you, you look like a string bean. So tomorrow morning at 6 meet me at the beach, so we can start training, and see what this quirk of yours is all about. Izuku nodded his head as he walked home with the hero watching him. As he returned to his small form, he said, "Good kid." He then looked at his hand. "I'll look for about 3 more weeks, and if I don't find someone worthy I'll go with Sir's choice." He then chuckled a little saying, "Maybe that will get him to talk to me again." The hero then buffed up again and jumped into the sky as he looked for a successor to give his power, not knowing he will meet him sooner than he expects. Izuku just returned home as he thought about today's events. It was truly mind-tiring what happened today. First, his ex-best friend tells him to kill himself. He was almost killed by a villain. He meets All Might. The hero crushes his dream. He then saves Bakugo by suddenly manifesting a quirk, and to top it all off, his hero offered him his power, but he refused today. He could say that today was among the 10 weirdest days of his life, if not the first. And the cherry on the cake, he might be going crazy because he was hearing voices in his head. The entity of chaos then slaps its forehead as it yells inside his head, "You're not going crazy. I'm as real as they get." Apparently, this had the desired effect as Izuku crouched to the floor as he said in his mind, "Geez, I get it's sensitive much." He was shocked by the way he spoke to this voice, but he was cut from his thoughts when his mother came and hugged him crying, "Izuku, are you okay, sweetie? I saw you crouching on the floor. Are you sick? Do you need medicine? Should I make some of Nana's old sickness soup?" The green-haired boy cringed when that was mentioned since he tasted it. He passed out. "No, I'm fine, Mom, but seriously no need for the soup," the boy said with a serious expression. He then softened his face as he said in a happy voice, "In other news, I have a quirk." The woman froze. Her mind couldn't comprehend what she just heard. Her son had a quirk, but the doctor said it was practically impossible for him to form it naturally. Did her son join some weird government experiment so he can finally have a quirk? She imagined her son getting impaled by needles with tubes connected throughout his body, so she began to cry. "Izuku, did you join some weird government experiment? Please don't say you did that, Izuku." The boy barely managed to move his mom away from him as he heard laughter in his head, so he said, "No, Mom, I didn't take it from government experiments." He then waited for her to calm down as he said, "First, you seriously need to calm down, Mom. Second, stop watching those conspiracy governments movies. They're messing with your head," he said as he pointed to a metal cap by the side of the TV, making her feel embarrassed. "Lastly, I've manifested it naturally." "Really?" the mother asked, unsure how to accept this new information. "Yeah, so what do you have for dinner?" Izuku asked. The woman wanted to press further to know how it manifested, but saw her hungry son, and said, "Kutsuden." The boy then quickly filled a bowl and watched the news that covered today's most important news. Opening the TV, it showed the following. "We just had the following. All Might managed to take down a villain made out of slime after said villain took a school kid hostage. Another kid walked into the scene and teleported the kid to safety, and then held the villain till All Might took care of him." It then showed Izuku fighting the villain, before the hero subdued him. "Izuku!" He then turned to his mom with a shocked expression. She then yelled, "My baby!" The woman then lunged at him and hugged him, breaking a couple of bones with the process as the boy tried to explain to her that he was just fine. After a lot of explaining and a lot of crying on Inko's end, Izuku finally managed to convince his mom that he was dandy fine, and explained how he got his powers. His mom was just glad that he was okay. The boy, after a day of excitement, went to sleep, but he finally fell asleep. Another chapter of this weird day unfolded. The boy then woke up to an empty void in which he floated into, but then heard a voice say, "I finally get to meet you after all these years." The boy then turned and was met by a goat thing. He wasn't too sure since the creature was an abomination which made Nizu's species look easy. But then the figure said, "You mean that possum mouse hero wannabe?" The boy was shocked the figure can hear his thoughts, but the figure then answered, "Of course, I can hear your thoughts. I am in your mind after all." The boy looked around. This was his mind. He honestly thought it would look more different, at least a little bit organized, not an empty void. "Stop whining. I'm here to introduce myself, and you keep asking questions. It's distracting to say the least," the figure said. "Sorry," Izuku said before asking, "And you are?" "Come on, you know me. I always visit you in your dreams. The figure answered. Izuku then raked his brain as he suddenly remembered how the figure was and said, You're that guy I always see in my dreams. Yes, that's me, he said as his thumbs, which were a loin claw and an eagle's talon, popped out and pointed at the figure, who then formally introduced himself. I'm Discord, the Lord of Chaos. The boy looked at him confused and asked, So you're like my Quirk? Discord then shrugged. Call me your Quirk, guidance counsel, mentor, whatever suits your fancy, I don't care honestly. This shocked Izuku. If this wasn't his Quirk, then what was he? Was this some kind of a mental quirk he was hit with? Was this some kind of hypnosis? Was this? Discord then conjured a megaphone as he yelled at the boy, Still in your mind, kid. Stop with the blabbering. You're annoying me. Izuku then felt the vibrations go through as his head began to hurt, causing him to fall through the endless void. He then saw Discord gliding beside him and asking him, Want a hand? Yes, please. The Lord of Chaos then grabbed him and helped him refocus, as the boy asked while rubbing his head, If you aren't my Quirk, then what are you? The ex-villain smiled as he said, It's story time. He then conjured a DVD player and a small projector as he said, Watch closely. You might learn something from this small presentation. He then summoned a DVD and put it in the player, and a video began. The video showed Discord, who was a villain for the lack of a better term. It showed how he loved to play with chaos. It then showed how he went to the pony world and began to rule it with an iron fist using chaos. It then showed how he was originally defeated by the elements of harmony. It went to his eventual escape from his rocky prison, how fought the 6 ponies turning them against each other, and finally his last-ditch attempt of escaping by possessing Izuku's body before he was turned into stone and losing power and getting SE in by the boy. It ended with a brief scene of his redemption. He looked at the boy, who was beyond flabbergasted, and asked, So what do you think? The boy looked at him and screamed, You tried to take over my body. The creature shrugged as he said, Hey, when comes to shove, you do what you got to do. It wasn't anything personal, it was just business. The boy then said, If this was supposed to make me feel better, then you SCK at this. It then hit the boy as he yelled, crawling backward, You're a villain. The chaos spirit then shook his head as he said, Ex-villain to be more precise. The boy then calmed down as he said, That's good. Discord didn't like that look as he said to the boy, Don't look at me like that. Everyone has a rebellious phase, and I overcame mine. Plus, I don't have my powers anymore, you do. The boy's sweat dropped as he said, I don't think a rebellious phase includes taking over a kingdom and ruling over them. He stopped for a bit before asking, And what do you mean by I got your powers? The chaos spirit then slapped him upside the head as she said, Didn't watch the video? It's clearly shown that you SE in my power. So I can do everything you can do? The boy asked with stars in his eyes. The ex-lord then said while moving his hand, Not exactly, you only reach 50% or 80% of my power. How, why? Because you're not like me. Look at me, my body is the representation of chaos while yours is normal. I guess if you take it all in you might explode to bits and pieces. He said as Izuku had a mental image of him exploding. The boy then rubbed his body as he asked, So aside from accidentally becoming confetti, what kind of powers do I have? The spirit then smiled as he summoned a list and began counting. Your powers as follows. Omnipotence, chaos magic, reality restoration, size shifting, shape shifting, gesturify, logic manipulation, telekinesis, hypnotic magic, telepathy, teleportation, creation, flight, replication, animation, appendage generation, anatomical liberation, object possession, transmogrification, matter ingestion, pyrokinesis, and thought generation, among many other powers, but seriously wait for a while. Before you start using the first 3, okay? Hearing no response, he looked at the boy who had his jaw hit the ground from shock. He then went and tapped on his skull, opening it as he said, Hello, anyone home? He then shut the skull, causing the boy to snap back to reality. The boy then shook his head as he said, I'm sorry, but that's a lot to take in. I have that many powers. The chaos spirit nodded his head and said, And many more. He then threw confetti in the air as he said, and I'll be your coach to train you in your powers, so get ready because it's going to be a laugh and a half." He finished as he laughed with the lighting in the background. The boy then asked, "Is lighting manipulation among my powers?" The chaos spirit nodded his head as he said, "Tomorrow we start something simple like telekinesis or flight." He then stopped for a little bit, then he said, "You know what, let me think of something else. But I have training with All Might." He was then smacked upside the head as Discord said, "Let me finish. I'll train you with him. While he focuses on the physical, I'll focus on the practical part." Okay, stop smacking me upside the head," the boy said as he pouted. He then added, "It hurts, you know." The ex-Lord of Chaos then smiled as he said, "Good, it's supposed to hurt." He then summoned a chair while putting Izuku in it. "Now sit, so I can explain how you access the powers of chaos." "There are rules to access them," Izuku asked confused. He didn't think chaos would be so picky or have rules. It is chaos after all. It kinda beats the entire point of being the Lord of Chaos if you follow the rules. The creature then said, "It's more how to power up yourself. You know, like how some quirks require some power-up or at least something to juice it, or some support item to make work perfectly. Your powers, at least for now, are like that." Discord knew that the boy was different from him to start with. He wasn't a being of chaos like Discord, so he can't naturally generate chaos, so the best way to have it is by absorbing it from nature. Okay, so it's like how the turbo hero needs orange juice to fuel up his speed, Izuku said, trying to get a clear idea of how his chaos powers worked in the first place. Discord then shrugged as he said, "Close enough." Discord then summoned a board, and was now dressed in a teacher's uniform as he began explaining the concept of chaos. "Listen, boy, chaos is wherever something out of order happens. It could be on a planetary scale, universal scale, heck even on a multiversal scale, or something as small as an individual scale." The boy then began to write everything in a small notebook he summoned, but this caused Discord to laugh as he said, "You know you won't be able to take them with you to the real world, right?" This made a huge cloud of depression appear over Izuku's head over the thought of his precious notes being lost, while Discord sighed, "We'll figure something out about this." He then yelled, "Now focus." The boy then focused again as Discord continued to explain, "For you, a beginner in chaos, to actually use the powers it comes with, especially the reality-bending ones, you must absorb the energy into your body and learn how to regulate it, or else it will probably lead for you to go nuts or crazy." The boy then cringed as he said, "Seems kind of bad thing going crazy in it." Discord then said, "You think?" "Of course, it is. Imagine someone with reality-bending powers going nuts on power. It will be horrifying, to say the least, but with proper training, you will eventually become good at it, not like me, but good enough." "Yeah, I wanted to ask, why can't I be good as you?" Izuku asked, intrigued about this particular point. "One thing," Discord said as he pointed at his body, "my boy, as I said previously, is a representation of chaos itself, so I was born to handle it. You, on the other hand, your body is normal. If you as so much try to use 100% of your powers, it will lead for you to be overloaded and go either boom or lacko." He then looked at the boy as he asked, "You get it now?" The boy nodded his head as he registered how hard it is to control chaos. "So how do I harvest chaos to use it?" The boy wanted to know this since this was the one that intrigued him the most. How will he be able to harvest chaos to use it? It is like the Sludge incident? Or is it something else? Discord then whistled saying, "Can you let me explain before you go off on a tangent?" The boy smiled sheepishly as he apologized before Discord continued, "Now, you have seen how to harvest chaos firsthand." Discord said and used a flashback to the Sludge scene where Izuku sees some weird waves in the ether before grabbing onto them and using them to save Kaken. It's a rather simple process in which you feel the chaos and drew it near you for you to use. "Okay," the boy nodded and then asked, "But then how do I find chaos?" "Well, you're not going to like this part, but sorry, it's part of life and it can't be helped." He then brought a list and began. Chaos can be found in the following places, which are, but are not limited to, murders, wars, hunger, famine, dehydration, torture. He continued with the list with a look of horror etched onto Izuku's face, so he concluded, "In other words, Wherever there's a crime you can feel it and absorb the chaos from it. Let me process this. Izuku said as he slumped in his seat as Discord said, take your time, it must be hard to take in given you want to be a hero. Izuku then gave him a no sheet Sherlock look that spoke for its own on the amount of anger and disbelief Izuku was going through. He then looked at Discord hoping for a solution and asked, are you sure there is no other way for a power-up? Sorry, but that's the only way chaos can be obtained. It's not an ideal way, but it's the only way. Discord said as Izuku slumped even further into his chair. The boy then began grumbling as he said, wonderful, just wonderful. The day I get power, I get to learn that this power is apparently fueled by the pain and suffering of others. Could this get any worse? Well, you could have used your own pain to manifest earlier, but you didn't know how so yeah. Discord said calmly as Izuku tried not to blow. Anything else? Izuku asked. Not really, but don't such a sour cake. Ink all about the good you can do with my powers. Discord said trying to cheer up the boy or else this won't work a bit. How am I supposed to be happy if my powers literally use others' misery as fuel? The boy said in a sad tone as he never accepted to be the cause of suffering for people. After this, will he be able to become a pro? Will he be accepted by society with his powers that basically needs suffering to work right? It was all mind-numbing. Discord, having enough of the endless banter, summoned a powerful water hose and activated it on Izuku, snapping him from his muttering spree. The boy then asked, must you do this every single time? The creature nodded his head as he said, every time you do this, accept this type of punishment, because no one wants a hero with a big fat blabbermouth. This caused the boy to blush with embarrassment as he noticed that Discord was right about this. The Lord then said, listen, I know that you might not like the way that things are going, but this is the way the world works. If you want to change it, then go ahead, ain't stopping you from doing that, but just remember that life is cruel and you can't change everything. The boy sighed as he took Discord's words to his heart. He then asked the spirit of chaos, so what are we going to train in tomorrow from one of my powers? Is it telepathy, summoning? Or is it telekinesis? The boy continued to mutter as Discord hosed him again, and the spirit spoke, none. The boy was shocked as he asked, what? Why? Discord then said, for the next month, you're only training in absorbing chaos from the world around till you can do it on a moment's notice. The boy tried to argue, but the chaos spirit didn't allow him as he said, no arguments. The boy then sighed as Discord sat beside him and said, you know you should really relax now. He then looked at his watch and said, well, seems my time is up. Don't forget not to push yourself too hard today. What do you mean? Was all Izuku can ask before he was jolted awake by the alarm. He looked at it, and it was 5:30 in the morning. The boy then screamed, oh no, I'm about to be late. Disclaimer, I don't own My Hero Academia. All rights for it belong to Kohei Horikoshi. I also don't own My Little Pony. Get ready for the test. Izuku ran as fast as he could to the beach. He didn't want to disappoint All Might. The hero was taking and dedicating effort to train him, so it would really rude to at least not be there on time. The boy looked at his watch and saw it was 5. 2 minutes later, he was on the beach panting for his breath, when he heard a voice from behind him laughing, there, you are my boy. I hope you didn't wait too long for me to arrive. Izuku shook his head as he said, no, All Might, I got here just a minute ago. He then looked around and saw the beach of garbage from the shoreside even to the water. He scratched his head as he said, is there a reason why you picked this location among all places there is? The man laughed a little as he said, perceptive as ever young Midoriya, I picked this place because you are going to clean it up and return it to its formal glory. Izuku looked around and asked, but why? I mean, can't we use some of the gyms in your agency? It seems more efficient this way. The boy finished as he thought about training at All Might's hero agency. It was a dream go true. It was really awesome to think his idol training him at his agency. All Might continued to smile as he said, well, my boy, people these days tend to forget that heroes were, and still are public servants, so that means they must serve the public above all others. That's why you will be cleaning this beach as a public service, and it would be also considered as training to grow your muscles given that there is trash of all sizes and shapes here. The hero then grabbed the boy's arms and said, I mean, look at those thin arms. Do they seem like the arms of a hero to you? The boy nodded his head as he agreed with all might. He spent so much time in the past hoping to gain power that he forgot to train to be a hero. At that moment he heard Discord say, You did, didn't you? The boy mentally scoffed as he said, Yeah, now shut up you cheap circus freak wannabe. The ex-Lord of Chaos laughed as he said, You crack me up, my boy. Who knew that all under this politeness you tend to project, there is a child who looks to talk back. Izuku then lowered and said nothing, as he felt All Might poking him. He then looked at the hero who said, Are you all right, young Midoriya? You seem to have zoned out for a moment. The boy chuckled nervously as he weighed his options. Should he tell All Might about Discord? Or should he keep it a secret? But if he told him, then the hero could find a way to help him use his power safely and train him. He was cut from his line of thoughts as the hero then asked, There is also one more thing, young Midoriya. The boy looked at him and the hero asked, What is your quirk exactly? I need to know, so I can add training to my plans. That way you can build up muscles and train your quirk at the same time. The boy then said, Well, my quirk you can call it The hero looked at him and said, Can you explain it further? Discord then said, Let me explain it. I know it more than you do. The boy wondered how, but Discord answered, Even though I'm considered powerless, I still can affect my surroundings, and one of them is appearing on the surface of the water. The boy panicked as he thought about telling All Might the truth of his powers, but Discord said, They're going to know one way or the other, so stop panicking and take a deep breath. The boy took a deep breath and looked at All Might saying, Look, All Might, I can't explain it myself, but I know someone who can. So can you please follow me? The boy walked toward the water as the hero followed him intrigued. When they stopped in front of the sea, the hero asked, Where is that person who can explain? The hero then saw the young man pointing to the water, and when his eyes landed on it, he saw a figure which looked like a combination of many animals. He then said, Is that him? The boy then said, Sadly, yes. The hero then looked at the figure and said, Hi. Discord then said, Hi yourself. He then dismembered himself as he stretched his body and said, I bet you have a lot of questions, mostly who I am, what is this quirk that the boy has, and how does it work? The hero nodded his head, as the ex-Lord of Chaos said, Well, for starters, I'm called Discord the Lord of Chaos, or ex-Lord for that matter. Before the hero can ask him what he means, or how he can hear him talk in the first place, I'm going to show you a small video that explains who I am and how I ended here. A projector then appeared in the water, and a film rolled showing Discord's entire history. When it finished, the hero said, You tried to take over his body. This caused Izuku to say, That's what I said when he showed me it last night. The hero then added, You're a villain. Ex-villain, Discord retorted, and I think we're past this point where I have to say T was a rebellious phase of mine. I mean, come on, everyone has them. The hero's sweat dropped as he thought that most rebellious phases don't include taking over a kingdom, but then again he is from another world. Discord then said, Drop the transformation. I know you can barely hold it. The hero chuckled awkwardly as he turned into his smaller form and then said, This was enlightening to know about your history, Discord, but I have to ask what is chaos and who can I help young Izuku train in it? The being of chaos then hummed as he said, No need for your help in the training per se, but you can make a schedule, so. My training with his powers won't cross yours with his body. And before the hero can object, I mean I did have these powers for hundreds if not thousands of years. The hero nodded understanding what he meant, but then asked another question, How can he access it? I mean how does it work in the first place? The hero then saw Izuku deflate as he said, To access chaos, I have to collect chaos energy, but to do that I have to take from places that chaos exists in. In other words, wherever there is a crime, I can power up. The hero understood why the boy was down, but then buffed up saying, Young Midoriya, while the way to collect said energy seems wrong, you are ignoring a very important thing. The boy looked at him wondering what did he miss as the hero explained, Your powers allow you to detect where chaos energy exists, correct? But that means that you can feel when crimes happen, so it means that you can go there before any pro, therefore, helping many people as possible. The boy thought about what All Might said and smiled. He was right. Since he can feel chaos energy, that means he can know where the crime is happening, so he can go there and help. Discord meanwhile gave a thumbs up to All Might for helping the crybaby get over himself. The hero then deflated as he said, "Young Midoriya, why don't you start collecting trash while I talk with Discord about your training?" The boy then stood up and began to collect trash while the hero talked with Discord. Half an hour late, Discord yelled in his head, "We're finished." The boy then ran over to All Might, who was brandishing a huge manual, as he said, "Look here, young Midoriya, from now on this will be your training program, and don't worry, everything will be included." The hero then gave him the manual as the boy read it, and to say he was shocked would be an understatement. The manual included everything from training with the hero to Discord, and even his sleep and food. "Wow, it's so detailed," Izuku said in astonishment. The hero chuckled a little as he said, "Well, thank you, young Midoriya. I like to call the American training program to become a hero. Now on today you'll start with meditation and trying to activate your quirk, so to speak, while I work the finer details in the plan." Izuku nodded his head as he sat down and tried to meditate with Discord's help, while All Might sat and read his plans. 3 weeks later, the boy had managed to start cleaning the beach and was making slow progress in growing his muscles, but he wasn't getting any closer to grabbing chaos energy. Even though he felt he had no idea how to grab it. He was thrown out of his meditation as he asked, "Discord, are you sure I'm not doing wrong?" The chaos being sighed as he answered, "For the 100th times you're doing it right, but you can't force it into your body." The boy frowned as he asked, "What do you mean?" "I mean you need to feel it. It has to come to you. Chaos is a tricky substance. It's a primal element of this world. You can't force something so primal to come to you, you have to feel it, then it will be collected." The boy then started to meditate again, as he tried to feel the chaotic energy. He cleared his mind and took a deep breath. He then began to feel it like he always did, but instead of forcing it into his body, he allowed it to naturally move around him. Moments later he felt it. His body was being energized, so he opened his eyes and saw chaotic energy swirling between his hands and entering his body. He looked at Discord and cheered, "I did it. I really did it." The chaos being chuckled at him as he said, "Yeah, you did, at least for a moment there," he said as he pointed to the boy. The boy then looked and saw it all had disappeared, causing him to frown. "Don't feel bad, it will take you another week or so before you have the hang of it." He then looked at his clock as he said, "Now start running, and just like I told you to try to feel it." The boy then began to run as he tried to feel chaos energy, but he was happy he was able to make at least some progress. Another 3 weeks went by, and by that time Izuku grabbed the concept of harvesting chaos energy and was getting better at it. He began to help All Might with his hero work by sensing where the crime is happening and telling the location. The hero would often joke about Izuku being his own personal crime alarm, to which the boy felt honored and cried a river, making both Discord and All Might wonder if he had some type of water-crying quirk that was unknown. Now, Izuku was currently lifting some pile of trash that each weighed 10 kilos by himself, and Discord then appeared in mind as he said, "I'm proud of you, Mini Lord of Chaos. You came to a long boy from the little whiny boy I first tried to possess, but now you're going to become your own hero." He then wiped a tear. "It's so moving." Izuku then quirked an eyebrow at him but shrugged as he said, "Well, I want to become a hero, so I can't afford to sleep on it like I used to do. I have to keep working to achieve my goal." Discord then clamped his hands as he said, "Bravo, bravo. I'm so moved right now, but I have some news that will make you a happy bunny boy." "Bunny boy," Izuku thought as the ex-lord chuckled at him. He then cleared his throat as he said, "I know deem you worthy enough to start power training." The boy's smile brightened as he began to jump and down, saying, "I can't wait to start training. I don't know what to do first, maybe reality manipulation or shape-shifting, or maybe I can." He was cut from his thought when a loud blow horn echoed in his head as Discord said, "Like hell, I'm going to allow to start with something like reality manipulation. I don't know about you, but I prefer living, or whatever my condition is considered here. The boy shook his head as he continued talking. We'll start with 4 simple things: telekinesis, flight, telepathy, and teleportation. This is your chaos energy application beginner's course. Reality manipulation is something that you won't take even after the exams. You will only take it when I deem you fit, got it? Izuku then saluted him saying, Sir, yes sir. Alright then, let's begin with telekinesis, and do try not to nerd out. Discord said as Izuku then began focusing on a small piece of trash, but he ended up falling to the ground after 5 minutes. He looked at Discord, who was right in front of him, but only he can see him as he said, This is hopeless. Stand up, you crybaby. Discord said, You can't just give up. Look, telekinesis is like a string. You need to visualize the thing you try and catch it with to actually handle it. He then looked at a small discarded bottle as he said, Now, try again. For the next half hour, the boy tried to activate telekinesis, but he always failed. So he said, I don't think I got it right. He then took a thinking position as he thought about what Discord told him, and began muttering, Well, I need to use telekinesis, but I can't. Discord compared to a string wrapped around the item, but I can't seem how to do it. The boy then went into a mutter storm, but an idea popped into his head. He then looked at a small bottle, visualized some chaos energy he had stored from his previous training, and made it into a fine string. He took a deep breath, sent said string to the bottle, and tied it around the item. He then lifted it for a few seconds before it fell to the ground when he lost concentration. He smiled at himself as he looked to the now sunbathing ex-lord of chaos, who gave him a thumbs up. The boy then heard a huge crashing sound behind. He looked to see All Might had arrived here. The boy smiled at the hero as he greeted him saying, Hey there, All Might. The hero deflated into his small form as he talked back, Hey there, young Midoriya. How is training going? I hope that I didn't erupt something. The boy shook his head as he said, Not really, I just figured out how to control telekinesis. I'm still far away from mastering it. I hope I get good at it before the entrance exam. The hero patted his back as he said, Don't fret, young Midoriya. I'm sure you can master your power before the entrance exam. Keep working hard, and I'm sure you'll make a perfect candidate for the hero course. They would be blind not to see the hero in you. Thanks, All Might. I just hope that I master the many powers I have before the entrance exam. I mean, there's so many to choose from, and I don't have too much time. He said, catching the hero's interest as he didn't know what type of power chaos came with. Discord then yelled from the side, Keep training and you'll get there. Now go back to it, and start trying to lengthen the time where you hold something with your telekinesis. All Might then rubbed his chin as he said, Young Midoriya, I never asked, but how many powers do you have? Discord wasn't very obvious when he talked about them. He only said that I'm on a need-to-know basis. Well, there are many and I can't count them here. The boy said as he scratched the back of his head, but to make my point clear right now, I'm training on the weakest skills as Discord call them, which are telepathy, telekinesis, flight, and teleportation. I really need to get back to working on my telekinesis, so by All Might. The hero smiled a little, but he couldn't help but shiver a little as he remembered his old nemesis who had multiple abilities, and if he didn't know any better, he would ask young Midoriya if he ever heard of him, but after talking to the ex-lord of chaos himself, he couldn't actually say that the boy was lying. The boy then went to a bottle, visualized the string around the bottle, and lifted it. The boy then slowly walked to the trash can on the sidewalk of the beach and threw it in it. He smiled at his work and went back to working with his powers. He then tried to lift a TV, but Discord smacked him on the head as he yelled, Did you lose your marbles? You can't just upgrade like that. You need to work from the down up. Start up slowly, don't try to stress yourself, or you'll lose control. The boy frowned as he said, I was just going plus ultra. I mean, how can I get stronger if I don't push my limits? Discord then said, There's a difference between pushing your limits and going to an early grave. What's the difference? The boy asked, making the being of chaos facepalm, but he then said, The difference is that while the first you push your limits to a reasonable degree, the second is you put your health in danger. This skill needs to be sharpened at least for a week before you begin to lift things like TV or anything its size. Don't forget your body needs some rest. So next you try to go plus ultra, go at it at a reasonable pace. The boy nodded his head as he went back to lifting stuff, so he then tried lifting a broken toy, to which Discord nodded his head and gave him a thumbs up. The boy then began doing a similar thing with objects the size or close to a weight of a bottle. Meanwhile, All Might was watching him, as he was still thinking about the previous subject. Could this be some sort of trick by his nemesis? But the person in question died years ago. He then shook his head as he saw that he was trying to picture the boy as his enemy. Even though he had the conservation with Discord, he can't be blamed if he was a little paranoid. The guy in question practically was a monster who lived on making people's lives miserable. He was someone who needed to be erased from the face of existence, or else he would cause so much harm to the world in ways no one would see. He then smiled as the boy lifted a small hairbrush, put it inside a bag he was using, and go back to work. He then stopped as the hero approached and said, "Young Midoriya, so what will you do now that you have telekinesis? Will you keep moving forward, or will you stop here?" "No, I won't stop. I want to excel," the boy said with determination in his eyes. "That's the spirit, my boy. Now, let's go lift some weights, and you can use your telekinesis to help out a bit so you can increase your weight limit," the hero said as he buffed up to his strong form. The boy then went to a bar, and All Might then put 2 weights from it and said, "Young Midoriya, this is a weight you can lift under normal circumstances, but now I want you to try and lift it with your telekinesis. And I will help if anything goes wrong." The boy looked at him and said, "All right, All Might. I'll try to do that." The boy then went to the bench, sat at it with All Might over his head, and watched him with his ever-present smile saying, "Don't worry, young Midoriya, I'm here for you, and I'll keep you safe." The boy nodded his head and said, "All right, here's go nothing," the boy said as he lifted the weight, focused his telekinesis, and then let it down and began to do it again till he did about 20 lifts and gave up. The boy then sat up and drank some water, as he saw All Might giving him a thumbs up and Discord now swimming, so he said, "This is going to be a long journey." 5 months later, Izuku was now proficient to an extent with his telekinesis, flight, teleportation, telepathy, and a couple more skills. He began last week to master Gesturify, and today he was working with Discord on shapeshifting. The boy heard the Chaos Lord saying, "Come on, put your back into it. Turn into a bunny." The boy then mumbled something under his breath, earning a smack on his head by Discord as he said, "Don't complain. I told you that shapeshifting isn't going to be easy. I told you that since you mastered the easier skills, we'll be going into more challenging skills. I mean, you did well with bubble prisons and other easy stuff. Now, I want to see your skills in shapeshifting. Don't forget that it needs more chaos energy, and in a fight, you can't just drain yourself. The transformation is easy enough, and even you know that, but your problem is saving energy, isn't it?" The boy nodded as he tried one more time to turn into a bunny. The boy then found himself collecting chaos energy from the world around him and storing it in his body, and then took a deep breath. A moment later, he opened his eyes and saw that he was looking at everything from another perspective. Discord then summoned a mirror and made the boy look at himself. He was now a small bunny with green and black hair and huge green eyes. The bunny then transformed back into Izuku and took a deep breath as he fell back. Izuku then said, "Man, that was tiring. I really thought that I was going to pass out." Discord then said, "Good, but now we're going to increase the size of your shapeshifting and use it to haul whatever lift from the trash that is present on the beach." The boy nodded his head as he sat down to relax a little, but then he felt something in the air. I was a disturbance in the air, and it was near him. It wasn't a crime, but Discord said that sometimes chaos could range from horrible things and small causal stuff. He stood up and went walking to the side of the beach, and in front of him, he saw a girl that was the reason for the chaos he sensed. The girl was looking around in confusion. Izuku couldn't help but blushed seeing her. The girl was really cute. She was a medium-height girl with hoofed feet. She had long blonde hair and a small blonde tail. She had big round eyes which are colored a Prussian blue. She also had big ivory-colored horns which Izuku surmised must be related to her quirk. The girl looked at him and shrieked a little as he approached her. The boy then lifted his hands and said, I don't mean any harm. Please don't be afraid. The girl then said, me not good at Japanese. Me not from here. I come from America. The girl spoke in broken Japanese, alerting him to the fact that she's a foreigner, and that she most likely speaks English. The boy then cleared his throat as he said in English, well, hello there, my name is Izuku Midoriya. The girl then brightened immediately, as she began jumping up and down with happiness, making the boy's heart flutter from how cute she is. She then said, you can speak English. The boy smiled, yes I can. Can you please help me out? I'm new in Japan, and I don't know anyone here. I really want to see more of the city, but my caretaker is always busy with her work, and she can't take me out. The girl explained, before gasping as she added, how rude of me, my name is Pony Tsunatori. Nice to meet you, Midoriya, right? The boy then nodded his head as he said, of course I can, but let me ask my trainer if I can leave today. The boy then grabbed his phone and texted All Might explaining what happened with him, and the hero replied with a positive saying that the boy had already cleaned more than half of the beach, so he can take the day off, and helped Tsunatori around the city. The boy then said, I got permission, so let's walk around. The girl nodded quickly as she walked beside him as they walked from the beach to the city, but Izuku then apologized, I'm sorry if I smell a little, but I was working really hard on the beach with my powers. I really want to make it into the hero course in UA. The girl then smiled at him and said with happiness, I also want to go into U. I came here to go there. Really? Yeah, I'm an exchange student. Which course are you in? Hero. The boy then brightened immediately as he began to mutter, really, so what is your quirk? I mean, it must be really strong if you want to enter the hero course. The girl then said, yeah, my quirk is named Horn Cannon. I can launch the horns on my head to hit targets. I can also control 4 horns with telekinesis at once. I can also use them for flight. It is really cool. What about you, Midoriya? What is your quirk? The girl asked him. The boy then said, well, my quirk is named Chaos. It allows me to collect some type of power I like to call Chaos Energy. This statement was yelled at by Discord, who refused his ideas to be claimed by Izuku to impress some girl, and I can use this energy into a multitude of ways. The girl tilted her head as she asked, what can you do? The boy felt his heart melt as he looked at her expression, but then answered quickly, well, I can do a lot of things with it, such as telekinesis, telepathy, flight, teleportation, pyrokinesis, cryokinesis, element control, and many more. The girl stared at him blankly as she then said, your quirk is so awesome. I mean, to do all those things. This seems awesome. The boy then scratched his cheek as he said, it's not really all that awesome if you know where the power comes from. Where does it come from? The girl asked. It mostly comes from any place that chaos occurs in. I mean, any place that crime happens in, or something as simple as getting lost like you were, I can collect it and use it. The girl then hummed a little as she thought about it a little. I still think it's cool though. I mean, if you can feel it, you can reach the place and stop the crime. The boy smiled, remembering All Might's words from a couple of months back when he told the boy that this ability can be used wisely if he masters the ability to sense it. The boy looked at the girl and said, thank you, Tsunatori. The girl smiled at him, and then they began their walk around the city. They walked to the mall where the girl did window shopping. They then went to the park where he told her a couple of stories from when he was still a young boy, and how he used to play in the forest beside the park, and finally, after a long tour, they had lunch in a restaurant. After they finished, the girl looked at her watch and frowned and said, it's already noon. I have to go back home. I wish we could talk more, Midoriya. She then had an idea as she took his phone, typed something in it, and said, it was really nice to meet you, Midoriya. Here, I typed my phone number on your phone, so we can talk later, and also. The girl began to kick the garble on the ground. Can you teach me Japanese? The boy then smiled at her. Of course, I would like to help Tsunatori. If you want, we can train together on the beach too. That way, we can become stronger for the entrance exam and enter the hero course together. The horse girl then nodded her head as she said, that's really nice of you, Midoriya. See you tomorrow here. The girl then went back home, while Izuku realized that he just invited her to train with him and All Might. Discord then said, nice. You didn't stutter with her. What's the occasion? The boy blushed as she said, well, I think it's thanks to this ability giving some form of confidence. At least, that's the theory I have. Discord then shrugged, as Izuku then called All Might and explained what happened. The hero didn't mind it much, as he explained that he has no problem helping the young girl train with him and that he'll work on a program for the girl to use. And for that day forward, Tsunotori joined Izuku training on the beach while the latter began to teach the former how to read Japanese. They also increased the control of their quirks. For Pony, she increased the number of horns she can launch from her head and increased the number of horns she can control in the air, and Izuku also managed to increase the scope of his abilities and even managed to convince Discord to let him learn the basics of reality manipulation, but he didn't let him try it, since he said he will only train him in it after the entrance exam. Right now, Izuku was on the beach with a small All Might talking with him. I'm really proud of young Midoriya. I mean, look at you, 10 months about you were nothing but a small crybaby. Now, you changed entirely. If I didn't know you, I wouldn't have believed that you're the same person I met months ago. The boy then smiled and said, Thank you, All Might. I'm really excited about the entrance exam, and I can't wait to get there. I really wish I do good on it. Well, I believe that you're going to do good, young Midoriya. All Might said, hoping that the boy will meet his successor during the exam, and he knew that both of them will get along with each other immediately. They then both heard a voice calling out for them. They looked and saw Pony running toward them. Hey Midoriya. Hey Mr. Yagi, how are you today? The boy blushed a little as the girl talked to him, and All Might laughed at the boy's reactions as he said, Good morning, young Tsunotori. I'm fine today. I hope you are ready to go to the exam. I have high hopes for both of you, and I know that you're both going to enter the hero course and make great heroes. The girl nodded her head repeatedly as she said, Yeah, I'm really ready. I'm going to totally kill it today. The girl still remembered the hard training she had, and she was really positive about today. She believed that today was going to be easy. She was sure that she was going to do great in the practical exam. That only left the theoretical exam, but she was sure that she was going to do great in it. She then looked at Izuku and said, Midoriya, are you ready to go to the entrance exam? I'm really excited, and I'm sure that we're going to do great. The boy nodded his head, smiling at her excitement, but also couldn't help but feel a little bit worried that something would go wrong and he would fail. Pony saw this and smacked the side of his head with one of her horns as she said, No worrying now, Midoriya. I know what you're thinking, and I'm telling you right now that you're going to make it in the hero course. The boy's eyes widened, but he then smiled at the girl and said, Thank you, Tsunotori. That's really nice of you to say. I believe that you're going to make it in too. All Might then looked at his phone and said, Now, I believe that you two should seriously begin making your way to UA, because you still have about an hour before the exam begins. The two nodded their head, walked to the train station, and took the ride toward UA. They sat in silence as they waited for the ride to end. When they finally arrived, Pony grabbed Izuku's arms and dragged him like a rag doll with the boy flailing, trying not to hit anyone. The future hero students then stood in front of UA, as they both gaped at the huge size of the place, and Pony said in her native language, Daemon, that's a huge place. How much does it cost? The boy only shrugged. She said, I don't know, but most likely it seems that it must cost a fortune to be in this place, but this is UA, and their motto is, Plus Ultra. So it's, go big or go home. The girl giggled a little as she said, Yeah, I suppose so. She then grabbed his arm as she said, Let's go in then, no need to wait anymore. Both of them were then startled as someone shouted at them saying, Get the F out of the way, Deku. Izuku and Pony then sighed and looked at the source, and they both saw Bakugo, who was wearing his usual scowl, and Izuku greeted him, Hi, Kaken. Shut the F up, Deku. He then looked at the girl holding his hand and asked, Who's this? Your girlfriend. Didn't know someone was desperate enough to date you. The girl then blushed furiously, but by the time she opened her mouth to talk, Bakugo was already gone. She looked at Izuku and asked him, Is that? Yeah, that's him, but he seems in a good mood today. The girl frowned as she said, Don't let him walk all over you, Izuku. Pony then grabbed his arm, and dragged him inside the school property as a girl with chestnut-colored hair watched both of them with a blush on her face, thinking that they were a couple. As Pony dragged the boy, Izuku thought, well, here I am in UA. I have to do my best to become a hero. It's now or never. Disclaimer, I don't own My Hero Academia. All rights for it belong to Kohei Horikoshi. I also don't own My Little Pony. The Exam from Hell. The two Hero Course contestants walked through the huge facility as they searched for the debriefing hall where they will be told what they are going to do today, and where will they go to take their tests. Izuku looked and saw a huge room, and grabbed Pony's arm as he dragged him inside the room. The girl smiled as she said excitedly in her native tongue, I can't wait, Izuku. I'm so excited about the test. This is so cool. My mommy studied here in UA and became a hero. I hope I can make her proud. The girl finished grabbing Izuku's attention since he didn't know that her mother was a hero, so he manifested his notebook and pen. So Pony, can you tell me who your mother is? The boy said as he readied his pen to write down her quirk and analyze it. The girl giggled at his antics, as Discord, who thanks to Izuku could manifest to others, appeared in front of her in his small form to stay away from people's sight and said, please don't encourage his antics. It's already troublesome enough. We don't need his girlfriend making it even further. Heroes shouldn't be blabbermouth who let out their secrets in the open. Izuku has long shared the origin of his powers with Pony, and where it came from. To say the girl was shocked would be an understatement, but that didn't change the girl's mind about the boy as he told him during their training sessions that he would make a hero regardless if he had powers or not. Pony, who now had a huge blush on her face wondering why everyone they met thought they were a couple, said, first, we're not a couple. Discord only snorted and added, yet. The girl carried on saying, I think it's cute when he mumbles. The boy who was on the sides had his face turn into a bringing mess, as he couldn't handle this anymore, and so was the girl who just realized what she said. The girl then answered his earlier question saying, my mommy is the American hero known as Cow Lady. The boy's eyes widened as he recalled her from one of All Might's team-ups in his early days back in the USA. He then said, that's so cool. He quickly began to write in his notebook as the girl giggled. The lights in the entire hall then went out, as a single light was now beaming to a desk at the beginning of the hall. Moments later, a man who looked like he didn't get a good night's sleep in 3 days strolled inside the room, causing the horse girl to ask the boy, Izuku, do you know who's the scary-looking hobo? The boy shook his as he looked at the man that he couldn't help but feel that he knew from somewhere, but he couldn't remember where. No, I don't think so, or at least I can't pinpoint where I saw him. The girl was shocked since she knew that Izuku knew about every hero there, including ones from outside the country. A cough drew everyone's attention as the homeless man said, good morning, problem children. This caused more than a few eyebrows to be raised at the odd naming. Right now, you're all going to the theoretical part of the entrance exam, before you all go to the practical part. The rules to the theoretical part are simple for all of you. The test is 1 hour, all of you will keep your eyes on your own paper, you are to keep quiet at all times. If any one of you has a quirk that helps them in this, there's nothing we can do about it, and most importantly, if any of you as so much try to look at your neighbor's test, both individuals will be kicked out. And with that, the man walked away from the students, leaving more than a stunned individual. The students were then divided into multiple groups to go to the theoretical exam. When Izuku reached his room, a huge smile broke on his face as he saw the ghost hero, Ectoplasm. He took the test from the man and began to do his test as Discord talked with him in his mind trying to help him. I think the correct answer for question 88 is C. Discord said, trying to help the boy with his test. The boy then looked at his test and saw that he was close to finishing, so Discord then decided to ask, so when are you going to ask the girl out? I mean, it's clear that she likes you, and most importantly you like her. The boy blushed heavily as he continued to write his exam as he replied to the ex-Lord of Chaos. It's not like that. She's just a friend. He was cut off by Discord, who calls you by your first name, had a few sleepovers at your house, and even slept with you in the same bed one time. He finished with a smirk. The boy right now resembled a human strawberry, drawing Ectoplasm's attention, but when he noticed who the boy was, he simply shook his head. All Might had long but forged Izuku's quirk papers saying that his quirk was named was Chaos, which immediately put the boy under the eyes of the HSPC, but All Might managed to calm down their fears as he didn't want the boy to be taken under their wing and become a mindless soldier. The hero knew the entire truth about the boy's quirk, so he simply considered it as something between the two chaos users. When the test was finished, the boy went and handed out his exam to the ghost hero asking for his autograph, which the hero did. Turns out, contrary to his scary-looking appearance, the ghost hero was a nice individual, albeit a little strict, but nice nonetheless. The boy then went to the same hall that he was in before, waiting for the explanation for the practical part of the test. He was hugged from behind by Pony, who asked him, "How did you do, Izuku?" "I did really great." The boy smiled at her as she disengaged from the hug and looked at him. "I did great. I think I might be able to get a full grade." The boy then puffed his chest in a rare show of power as the girl couldn't contain her laughter at his antics. The girl then pouted as she said, "No fair, Izuku. You have Discord to help you out during the tests. The guy lived for thousands of years. He already has so much knowledge about everything." The X-Lord then appeared in his mini-form saying, "Guilty as charged." The two then began to laugh as the boy looked away with a pout on his face, but a harsh thud beside the boy caused Discord to disappear. Both the girl and the boy looked beside them only to see Bakugo sitting beside them, causing him to growl, "Of all the FING places to sit, couldn't you sit somewhere else?" Izuku steeled himself as he said, "I can sit where I want, and you don't have a say in it." The moment the words left his lips, Bakugo's expression turned into something that resembled a demon that came straight out of hell, who wants nothing but to kill the green-haired boy right there and now. But before he can do anything, the lights went out, causing the green-haired boy to sigh in relief while Pony was giving Bakugo the evil eye. The lights came back up again, but this time to the desk in front of the hall. A different man now walked up to the stage. He was wearing stylish clothes with a speaker attached to his throat. He had his hair styled like cockatoo feathers. He was the voice hero, Present Mike. The man sat down at his desk and said, "How are you doing, everybody? Can I get a yeah?" The hero sat down at his desk waiting for a response but got nothing. Over with Izuku and Pony, both were giggling at the hero since Izuku was a fan of heroes, and Pony liked mixed style. The hero then tried again to have the children react with him. "Hello, they're future hero examinees. Are you excited like I am for the test today? Because I sure am. So how about I get from all of you little listeners a little he?" This time both Izuku and Pony yelled at the hero, "Yeah." The hero then raised his hands as he pointed at the two hero examinees saying, "Thanks for that, little speakers." However, at their side, Bakugo began to slowly sink in the seat to avoid being accidentally associated with the two idiots, as he called them. Also unknown to the two future heroes, a boy with blue hair looked at them with a scowl on his head as he shook it dismissively at them. Izuku then said excitedly, "I just replied to Present Mike. This is so cool." He looked at Pony, who was sharing his exact emotions at the moment, as he carried on, "I listen to his radio show every day in the morning. It's so cool." Bakugo then slapped his forehead as he said, "Shut the f***, Deku. And put a muzzle on that girl of yours." Izuku had to grab Pony to prevent her from choking him. "He's about to start, so shut the heck up so I can listen to his explanation." He looked away from him as he said quietly, "Demon idiot. What did I do to ever deserve this?" The two hero students looked at the hero as a huge picture came from behind him. The hero then pointed to the screen and began his explanation. "All right, little listeners and the two little speakers, now let's get to the main event of this little seminar, shall we?" The voice hero then pointed to the screen behind him. "As you can see, there are three types of robots that you can destroy. The first is the one-pointer. The robot had one wheel with two huge gun hands that protect it, and you have the two-pointer, which is a little bit tougher than the first one, but it is still doable and easy to defeat. The second one seemed like a scorpion-shaped robot with a huge tail that was connected to its back. And finally, there is the three-pointer, which is the hardest of the robots to beat because it was made to present a challenge to you little listeners to see what you are made of." He then said, "Now please, everyone look under your desks, and you will find your assigned arenas where you will fight the robots." The students then looked and saw that the desk in front of them now presented them with small cards that presented them where they were going to fight. Izuku looked at his card and saw that he was in Arena B. He looked at Pony, who was smiling as he asked her, "We're going to fight, Pony?" "B," the girl smiled at him, "we're totally going to rock this, but get ready for me to defeat you." The girl said with a huge smirk. "Is that a challenge?" Izuku asked with a smirk of his own, but the happy mood was destroyed by Bakugo. "Can you stop flirting with each other? We're here to be heroes, not lovers." He then looked at the Izuku's card and said, "Seems that we're not in the same place. Pity, I wanted to kick your butt to the next century." Izuku then said, "I think that they separated people from the same school to avoid them trying to help each other." He then looked at Bakugo's card as he asked him, "Where did you end up getting it?" The blonde-haired boy then snarled as he said, "Go away, Deku. I'd never tell you where I am." The green-haired boy sweat-dropped as he said, "But you're the one who looked at my card first." Present Mike then continued with his explanation, "All right, little listeners, now regarding the test, the rules are simple as they get. You are going to destroy as many robots as you can to gather points. The more you gather, the greater your chances are to enter the hero course. Everything goes as long as you don't attack other competitors. Furthermore, stealing another examinee's kill will lead to a penalty, so don't try that." And now, the voice hero was going to add something, but he was stopped by a boy who raised his hand saying, "Excuse me, sir, can I ask you a question?" The boy looked like a robot since his posture was extremely rigid, and he was chopping his hand in the air like a robot. He was wearing a brown jacket and rectangular-shaped eyeglasses. The voice had his eyebrow twitch cause he was interrupted mid-explanation, but he put a smile on his face as he looked at the boy, and said with a chipper voice, "All right, examinee 7111, shoot your question away at me, and let's see if I can help in any way possible." The voice hero finished as the boy nodded his head. The boy then stood up and held the pamphlet that the school gave them to read about the robots in the test as he began speaking. "First off, I'd like to ask about the fourth robot that was represented in the presentation that you just gave. I didn't hear explain anything about it, and I don't see anything about it in the pamphlet here, so I must ask what it is. This should be considered a huge mistake on UA's behalf to forget about such a thing given how prestigious its reputation is." This caused Mick's brow to twitch again, but before he can answer, the boy turned toward Izuku and Pony saying, "And you two over there, the one with the green hair and the one with the pair of horns." Izuku pointed at himself as he asked, "Are you talking to me?" Pony, on the other hand, just blinked in confusion, as she was sure that both of them were quiet so no one heard them talk about the test. The boy then continued, "Both of you have been muttering and talking with each other this entire time. If you can't take this seriously, leave. This institution doesn't need freeloaders like you. The moment you came here, you were both distracting everyone from the beginning when you yelled." While Izuku felt embarrassed about what happened, Pony didn't have it as she yelled back, "What about you? You disrupted Present Mike during his explanation, plus if you looked at the pamphlet you would have seen it's called a zero-pointer. And tell me something, how did we bother everyone when you're the only one complaining? My friend mutters when he tries to strategize, so if anything, you're trying to distract him from doing his best and everyone else." This caused Izuku to look at her with awe while discord said in his head, "You sure you don't like her?" The boy's face turned red from embarrassment as he said, "No, of course not, I apologize for my accusation." Present Mike then took control of the ship again as he said, "No problem, little listener 7111. Just try to understand what's happening before you throw an accusation next time. As for your question, like little speaker 5439 said, it's called the zero-pointer. It's a huge obstacle that no one is supposed to be able to fight. If you see this thing, turn and run since no one can actually beat it. Consider it as the boss villain from the Mario Brothers video game Bowser." The blue-haired boy then nodded his head as he said, "Thank you for your explanation." He bowed and then sat down on his desk. Present Mike then said, "All right, little listeners, now everyone get ready to go to the exam area, and do the best you can. Don't forget the school's motto, plus ultra." The hero then stood and walked away from the desk. Pony then grabbed Izuku's and dragged him away like a rag doll to go to the bus that will take them to their arena. The girl said happily with a huge grin on her face, "Let's go do our best, Izuku." The boy then replied with the same smile, "All right, Pony, let's do our best, and see which one of us will do better in the test. You're on, Izuku." The girl replied excitedly, before adding, and the loser will have to take the winner to buy ice cream. The boy chuckled at her knowing that the girl had some serious sweet tooth on her. The two teens boarded the bus that would take them to their site where they would take the practical part of the exam. The two talked to each other during the duration of the trip, making strategies so they can fight off the robots. When they reached the city, they marveled at the scene in front of them. The site itself was a giant city made of ruins. Truly, UA was the personification of the saying go big or go home. The boy wondered if UA had this much money, or if it had a benefactor that just didn't care where his money was going. The boy shook his head as he saw Pony go to a side so she can begin with her stretching. The boy watched her for a bit as Discord said in his head, "Like what you see." The boy blushed quickly as he began to mumble incoherently. Discord chuckled at him saying, "Clam down, it's natural for you to like a girl. It's not the end of the world, you know." He went silent for a moment before asking again, "So, are going to ask her out on a date after this?" The boy's face went atomic red as he said, "You can't just say that like it's nothing." The boy then scratched the back of his head saying, "Plus, I'm sure she doesn't see me that way." Discord sighed as he face-bombed saying, "You're both seriously dense. You both clearly like each other. You both hung out with each other for the past 5 months. You both watch the same type of movies, which is nerd movies by the way, no class at all." He was cut off by Izuku saying, "Hey, Marvel is one of the classics, show some respect." Discord scoffed at him with a smirk, "Anyway, my point is that you two totally like each other, so why won't you ask her out?" Izuku sighed as he dragged a hand at his face looking at the spirit of chaos with an exasperated look and explained, "It's like I don't want to, but she's my first friend from a very long time. I'm afraid if I asked her out that this might affect just drastically if she rejected me." The spirit of chaos nodded its head saying, "I get where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, you have to take leaps of faith to make things work. Playing it safely is good, but sometimes you need to take chances." The boy nodded his head as he understood his mentor of sorts' words, and said, "All right, have it your way. I'll ask her out when I get my results." He crossed his arms, and looked away seeing, "Are proud of yourself now?" Discord laughed and said, "Of course, I can now add to my resume matchmaker." He then began to ask himself, "What name should I choose, Izukui or Panku? What to choose? What to choose?" The boy blushed at the couple's name as he turned around to continue his stretches. When he did that, he noticed a girl with blush marks on her cheeks taking breaths as she tried to calm herself. The boy smiled to himself as he remembered how he was a couple of months ago. The boy then stood up and went to the girl to try and cheer her up, so she wouldn't be too nervous when she goes to the test, but suddenly a hand clasped on his shoulder taking him by surprise, or it would have if wasn't for the chaos ability of enhanced senses already warning him of the approaching presence. He turned to the individual that the boy who Pony roasted in the hall during present mix explanation. "Wow, this guy sure likes to spread his nervousness to others, or he's just so stiff he seems that he has a stick up his butt like Bakugo would say." The boy opened his mouth to try and say something, but Izuku quickly shut him by saying, "Dude, calm yourself. I was only trying to help her. She was nervous and I was trying to help her calm down. I mean, it's a hero's job to help people feel safe after all." The boy had his mouth clamped shut as he suddenly felt very embarrassed, and said quietly, "I'm sorry, it seems I misjudged your intentions." He then bowed at 90 degrees as Izuku said, Now, no need for that, all of us make mistakes." He then looked at the boy and gave him a chocolate bar saying, "Here, you need more than me. You seem nervous, eat it. It sure helps me when I'm nervous." The boy looked at the bar before taking and bowing another time saying, "Thanks for your kindness. I already know that you're going to be a great hero, and proved yourself to be my superior. I wish I can learn more from you. I don't think that a stick, but I think he's really earnest." Discord said, to which Izuku accidentally said, "Yeah, that seems about right, Discord." The boy looked at him and asked, "Excuse, but who are you talking to?" Izuku blushed before rubbing the back of his head and explained, "Well, you see my quirk is kinda sentient, so I was talking to it. And it goes by the name of Discord." The boy hummed as he said, "That's interesting. I never encountered a sentient quirk before, but the world is full of wonders. The boy then gasped and said, "Where are my manners? My name is Tenya Ida. It's a pleasure to meet you. Izuku Midoriya, and it's also my pleasure to meet you, Ida." The boy shook the other one's hand, but when he touched it, something happened. The boy found himself in a dark alleyway, where the sound of swords echoed. When he came back, Ida asked him, "Midoriya, are you all right? You seem to have blacked out for a second." The boy shook his head and said, "No, nothing, just a bad memory. And by the way, since we're on the subject of bad memories, here's a word of advice: never go to dark alleyways. You don't know what type of creeps will be waiting for you there." The taller boy, although confused, nodded, as Izuku took his leave to talk to the girl he saw from earlier. He walked up to her and he heard say, "All right, this is one of a time life chance, Ochako. You can't fail here. You have to help your parents, so you need to get into the hero course." He then tapped her shoulder, causing her to yelp and jump back a little. When she looked at him, she said, "Was I distracting you? I'm really sorry." The girl then began to mutter apologies at a speed that would put Izuku to shame. The boy chuckled a little, causing the girl to look at him, so he said, "Actually, I came here to try and help you. I saw that you were extremely nervous, so I wanted to help you calm your nerves down." The girl looked at him and blushed to say, "Thank you, I'm really nervous. I mean, this is a rare opportunity, so I'm afraid that I might not be able to make it." He understood where the girl was coming from. He was also nervous given that he only had his powers for 10 months and trained them in a hurry, but nonetheless he was determined, so he said, "It's okay, I believe that you can totally do it." The girl blushed as she rubbed the back of her head with a sheepish expression as she said, "Thank you. I really hope you and your girlfriend make it too." The boy immediately gained a blush as Discord laughed at his expense. Izuku then shook his head saying, "I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself before. My name is Izuku Midoriya." The girl replied by saying, "Ochako Uraraka." Izuku then said, "All right, Uraraka, I'll give this final piece of advice, which is that a hero's core base is saving people, and also when the gates open, run as quickly as you can." He then flashed a thumbs up. "Okay," the girl droned on, confused. Suddenly the gates of the city opened, and Izuku with Pony ran quickly in, with Ochako following Izuku's advice and walking inside the city. Voices of rejection echoed out as people began to talk about how the three will be disqualified. "He didn't tell us to move yet. Those three will totally get disqualified." Suddenly Present Mike came over the speaker system saying, "What are you waiting for? Heroes don't wait for go signs in real life. Follow the other three leads and go in already." The other contestants then ran quickly inside the city to gather points. Inside the city, Izuku ran looking for points. He made around and saw 2 one-pointers. So he used all the chaos energy present in the entire test site and other sites and turned into a rhino. The rhino quickly ran and slammed his body inside the first robot, destroying it, before putting his horn through the other one. The boy then turned back into normal as he used his enhanced speed to run quickly through the area, and once again he found a robot, a 3-pointer to be exact. The boy smiled as he decided to use something other than his shape-shifting. He then used his magnetism, as he said, "Metal meet magnetism." The robot then began to shrink on itself till it was nothing but scrap. The boy then ran again through the field before finding 3 2-pointers. The 2-pointers saw him, and they lifted their hands saying, "Target acquired, eliminate." The robots then throw their tails at him, to which he dodged. Izuku then tapped the tail, causing the robot contained to it to be cut in half, as one half was out in the open while the other was in a bubble prison. He then used his telekinesis to crush a robot's head. And finally, he used cryokinesis to burn the third robot. He then began to count on his hands. "All right, let's see, so that's 2 1-pointers, 1 3-pointer, and 3 2-pointers. So I gathered till now about 11 points." He then used teleportation to find new targets, leaving behind him a gaping audience as one of them said, "Are we seriously going against a monster like this?" Back in the observation room, several people were watching the exams with interest. One of them then said with a calm voice, "It would appear that we have a promising batch this year." Another one then spoke in a sincere voice, "Yes, and that makes me so excited." A tired voice then rang out as he said, "Please don't do that. We don't want lawsuits this year. A raspy voice then spoke up. All the students are performing greatly, all things considered. Each is displaying impressive abilities. Another person then added, some are fighting with pure raw strength and using their powers to the fullest. A screen was showing who was fighting robots with a huge maniacal smile on his face as he blasted robots away. Some are using the environment to their advantage. It now showed a frog girl using her tongue to lift robots and then throw them to the ground. Others are defying all the odds even though they can't much to the robots. It now showed a robot being shut down courtesy of a switch being shut off by an invisible girl. And then the tired voice said, and then people are using the chaos of the exam to their advantage. He said as he pointed to Izuku who blasted a robot with ice. Like I said, a promising batch this year. The original voice spoke. He then smiled as he said, now, it's time for the true test. He then pushed a huge red button as he yelled, release the Kraken. Others looked at him with an exasperated look at his antics, but only shrugged because they work for him. Only one figure sat quietly as he said, now, it's the true test of a hero. Back in the ground, Izuku shifted from his wyvern form after he destroyed a 3-pointer, as he said, alright, and that makes it about 80 points. Good. He suddenly felt the ground begin to shake as he looked at the hulking monstrosity in front of him, as he said, seriously, who's funding you? Killer Robots Incorporated. The boy then began to run away from the robot like the other contestants, but he then heard a faint voice that yelled, help. When he looked back, Uraraka was stuck under some rumble, unable to come from beneath them with the 0-pointer marching toward her. The boy then ran toward her as he passed Pony who yelled, Izuku? The girl was shocked when he didn't reply, but then saw Ochako and decided to help him to free the girl. The boy then reached Ochako as he tried to lift the rumble. The girl saw him and then said, Midoriya, what are you doing? That giant thing is coming. Go away, so you won't be hurt. The boy looked at her and said, never. The rumble he was trying to lift was budging a little as the giant robot came closer, but suddenly 2 horns slammed themselves into the rock as Pony said, you seriously are stubborn, Izuku. Next time call for help. The 2 of them then managed to lift the rumble as they dragged Ochako away from the killer robot, but Izuku looked at it and began to walk toward it as Pony said, Izuku, what are you planning to do? What a hero does. I'm going to take out the threat. But that thing is huge. You could get hurt. And so could others, so that's why I have to take it down. But. No buts. The horse girl sighed knowing that there was no changing his mind now, but only said, just promise that you will come back in one piece. The boy smiled at her and said, don't worry because I got this thing in the bag. The boy walked up to the 0-pointer. He knew that he had to stop it, but the problem was that he didn't have the slightest idea of how he was going to do it. At first, he thought he could use his reality-altering abilities, but given that he had no training whatsoever in this domain, he might as well throw a pick of dynamite into an oil well and hope that the well doesn't blow up into bits and pieces. He had then had an idea that might just work. It was crazy, that's for sure, but it had hope for it to work. The boy then began to absorb the chaotic energy that was in the field and the surrounding ones. He looked at the giant 0-pointer as he lifted his hand to the sky, causing a huge cloud to appear, and then used his weather manipulation to cause lighting to strike the machine. Back in the observation room, All Might sat as he watched Izuku and his successor fight the 0-pointer. In life, there is no merit in doing the right thing. No one will congratulate you or give you a medal for it. However, for some people, happiness is for their help is all that they need to do it. Izuku then turned into a huge dragon as he breathed a huge amount of fire on the 0-pointer, managing to cause its armor to begin to melt from the intense heat. Discord then appeared in Izuku's head as he yelled, Izuku, what the hell are you doing? You're overloading yourself, and that thing is still rolling on forward. You need to go away. Izuku then turned back into his human form as he began to condense the chaos energy into his super strength aspect, focusing it into his arms to help make one super punch. The boy then used his teleportation and was near the 0-pointer's head as he punched it, causing the huge machine to cave on itself. The boy smiled at his handiwork as he began to pass out, but he said, that's totally worth it. The boy then allowed himself to black out as he felt something grab him, preventing him from dying. With all might, he then said, "Nothing is more beautiful than self-sacrifice." He then watched both his successor and the ex-Lord of Chaos collapse to the ground after destroying the zero-pointer to save people. Back in the testing area, Pony just barely managed to grab Izuku from midair using her horns before helping him land on the ground. The girl sighed as she looked at Izuku's sleeping form. He seemed happy with himself. It wasn't like he almost caused her a heart attack not a couple of moments ago. Well, training could be a good way to get back at him, but now she had one thing to do. She hugged the boy and began to cry, telling him how she was afraid that he was going to die, earning a couple of weird looks given that he was unconscious and couldn't possibly reply, but she didn't care. Moments later, Recovery Girl came and healed all the injured individuals, and robots took Izuku to the infirmary to let him rest since he overused his quirk. Pony tagged along to make sure that he was okay. Ochako went along to make sure that her savior was fine. An hour later, Izuku woke up groaning. He looked around only to see a very set-off Pony looking at him with Ochako sitting there with worry in her eyes. Pony then yelled in English saying, "And it is Izuku, how many times do I have to tell you to stop doing stupid things?" The boy scratched his head saying in Japanese, "As much as I had Discord tell me that I'm an idiot when it comes to social skills." The girl nodded her head saying, "Exactly, so stop doing it, okay?" The boy nodded his head, knowing deep down that he was going to break this promise very soon when school starts. He then said, "How many points did you collect?" The girl then smiled saying, 60 points. The boy then replied, 80 points. The girl pouted, "No fair, Izuku. You have all these powers, it's hard to keep up." The boy chuckled saying, "Well, a deal is a deal. So, I want a chocolate triple scoop please." The girl, although pouting, nodded her head. Izuku then turned to Ochako, "Uraraka, do you want to come with us? We're going to buy ice cream." The girl blushed upon being noticed, feeling like she was interrupting something, but said, "No, I just wanted to say thank you for saving." She then looked at her clock and said, "I really have to go now." The girl then took her to leave. Izuku then looked at Pony, "So, shall we go to earn my winnings?" The girl huffed as she stood up. Her tail was moving and wagging left and right. Izuku then said cheekily, "You know it's hard to take you seriously when your tail is acting like an excited puppy." Izuku then ran outside the room with Pony yelling, "I swear Izuku, I kick your butt. This the last time you compare my tail to a puppy." Recovery Girl could only smile as she said, "Young love. Disclaimer, I don't own My Hero Academia. All rights for it belong to Kohei Horikoshi. I also don't own My Little Pony. Leap of Faith." It's been a week since the entrance exam, and Izuku was waiting for the results. Every day, he would go down to the mailbox and check the letters to make sure that it doesn't get lost. Finally, one evening when he had Pony over for dinner, the boy sat staring blankly over a piece of fried fish, causing Discord to say, "Hello, are you there?" The boy didn't respond, but then his mother said to him in worry, Izuku, are you all right? You've been at that fish for a while now." Pony then added, "I really think you should calm your nerves regarding the test results. I did receive mine. It's only a matter of time before you get yours." Discord then appeared on the tables and said, "Tell him, sister. I've been trying to calm him down ever since he came from the exams, but nothing works with him. It's always going big or go home." The boy silently muttered, "Come on guys. I'm not that bad." He was answered by the three said in perfect sync, yes, you are." This made him slump in depression as he said, "Even you, Mom." The door then rang, and it was their neighbor from the end of the hall saying, "Good afternoon, Miss Midoriya, but I think this belongs to you." She looked and saw that the man was holding 2 letters with UA's stamp on them. The women took it from his hand and began to thank him profusely. She walked inside the kitchen and she said, "Izuku, the results are here." The boy jolted from his seat as he grabbed the letter from his mom and looked at it. He looked at Pony, who smiled at him and took her from her pants. They both agreed after the tests that they would open their letters together. The two excused themselves and went into Izuku's room. Izuku asked, "So, how do we determine who opened his letter first?" The girl looked at him with a small glint in her eyes as she said, "Rock, paper, scissors. It's a method used to end disputes forever. The boy's sweat dropped at the serious expression she gave him but accepted nonetheless. They played 3 rounds, and Izuku lost all of them since he always used a rock which caused Pony to win. The girl then opened her letter, and a small disc rolled from it. The disc displayed an image of a small rodent-like creature that seemed to stand on its legs. This caused the girl to be confused as Izuku then explained, "This must be the mind hero, Nizu. His quirk is high specs. He could make me look like a caveman learning how to use fire." This shocked Pony, but Nizu began to speak. "Hello there, young Tsunatori. I bet that you are wondering who I am, or to be more exact what I am. Am I a dog, a bear, or a mouse? Well, that doesn't matter, but I am the principal and my name is Nizu like your good friend Izuku Midoriya must have told, and to him, I say please don't sell yourself short, you're quite smart yourself, and no this isn't live." This shocked both teens that he anticipated their discussion, but now let's get to the real deal like you kids like to call it. For beginning you did marvelously on your written tests scoring an 88% which enabled you to gain a seat in general studies, but you aim for something higher, the hero course. In the practical, you managed to gain about 60 villain points which were enough to earn you a seat in the hero course, but what kind of hero school are we if they only think about how hard you can punch? You also gained through various heroic acts about 60 recuse points earning a total of 120 points being the 3rd person to score higher than All Might this year. Miss Tsunatori, I'm excited to see you in school next semester. And by the way, the second one continues information about your dorm room and your class. The video ended as Pony looked at Izuku and began to cry saying as she hugged the boy making him blush, "I made it, Izuku. I really did." The boy smiled at her as he said, "I'm really happy for you Pony, so I'm gonna open my letter now, and when I'm finished, we'll see together in which classes we both are." The girl nodded as the boy opened his letter. A similar disc to Pony popped out, but this time they were greeted by, "I'm here as a projection." This shocked both teens, but All Might carried on. "Now, I bet you're wondering why I'm here, and why I wasn't responding to your calls." This was true since Izuku was trying to reach out, but he never responded, and Pony was on the secret since All Might that Pony was training with Izuku, and came to the beach and deflated in front of her. "Well, that's because you're looking at the newest teacher in UA." This shocked both teens further since All Might will be teaching them this year. Now, let's get this show on the road. For a beginner, you did extremely good on the written test scoring the highest even among recommendation students scoring a 99%, and you only had one mistake away from a perfect score earning you a spot in our general studies, but you had your sights on something higher, so to the results of the practical exam. You scored about 80 villain points higher than anyone else. However, during your test, you displayed various feats of heroics actions, such as saving young Uraraka from the zero-pointer, and this earned in total 100 rescue points. This made you score higher than me and set a new record in the school. Young Midoriya, welcome to your hero academia. The two looked at each other, and Pony smiled at him saying, "Congrats, Izuku. I'm really proud of you." The boy smiled as he wiped some tears away as Discord appeared saying, "Congrats, and for that, you'll begin reality-bending training starting tomorrow. But remember what we talked about." The boy then gained a blush as he looked at the horse girl. He sighed knowing that the former chaos user was right. He looked at the girl as he took a deep breath saying, "Pony?" The girl looked at him and said, "Come on Izuku, let's open the dorm letters, and see which class we're in." The boy gently held her hands making her blush as he said, "I really need to tell you something." The girl nodded as she mentally thought, "Is really going to happen? You see, ever since I met you, I've been having these weird feelings toward you. You've been my first friend in 10 years ever since I was diagnosed as being quirkless. You accepted me regardless of my eccentricities. At first, I only thought of it as admiration, but over time it became clear that it was more than that. I tried to tell you how I felt on different occasions, but I was always afraid that you might reject me, but I can't hold it in anymore, so I'm going to ask you. Pony, will you be my girlfriend?" the boy said as he closed his eyes expecting the worst. What he didn't expect was the horse girl grabbing him by the face and smashing his lips into hers. He was shocked for a moment, but then allowed himself to melt in the kiss as he was entranced by the softness of her lips. The girl broke away from him with a blush, trying to breathe as she said, "What took you so long? Of course, I'd be your girlfriend. You don't know how much I love you, Izuku. You're my first friend in Japan. Everyone used to laugh at me and my inability to speak Japanese when I first came, but you didn't. You took in and became my friend, explaining to me everything. You helped me with my quirk and supported my dreams. You're everything I want in a boyfriend." The boy then felt his tears well in his eyes as he thought this moment, in general, will never come. Both Izuku and Pony then kissed each other for a second time, and Izuku said, "How about we go next week on a date to the amusement park?" The girl nodded her head as her phone binged, indicating that she got a massage. She looked at it and saw a message from Ochako saying that she passed and earned the third highest score, 102, greater than All Might. Both Pony and Izuku then looked at the dorm letters and opened them as they looked at the card and said in sync, "I'm in class 1A1B. Pony pouted quickly as she said, "Man, I really wanted to be with you in the same class." The boy gently caressed her face as he said, "Don't worry. We could still see each other at the lunch breaks or in the dorms." He then read the dorm notice that said he must be in his dorm during the next 2 days, unlike Pony, which said in the next 2 weeks, and Niza wants to speak with him. The girl nodded her head as she said, "All right, but you owe cuddles." Both of them began to giggle as they left the room, with Inko waiting patiently for the results as she asked, "Did you get in?" The boy smiled at her as he said, "Of course, and I came first and destroyed the school record." Pony then added, "I came in second and also scored a mark higher than the original record." Inko felt her eyes stung from happiness, but the two still had more news for her as they both held each other's hand and held small blushes on their face as Inko's mind began to piece it together quickly. Izuku began speaking, "Mom, Pony, and I talked for a little, and we're a couple now." The woman blinked once, then twice, and then a third, causing both teens to worry, as Izuku said, "I think we broke her." The woman screamed loudly as she said, "My baby finally has a girlfriend." And then the waterworks began flooding the apartment. They spent the entire night celebrating their success and their new relationship. In the Bakugo household, a certain young man was currently fuming with anger as he looked at the results. He wasn't beaten by one person, he was beaten by 2 people, he was beaten by 3 people, and it wasn't like he was beaten by 1 or 2 points. The lowest difference was between him and some wretch named Ochako Uraraka, who had 25 points more than him. The problem was that she wasn't even close to his villain points. She had 45 villain points, while he had the only reason she got 102 was due to the 57 rescue points she earned. He fumed in his mouth when he read the rescue points. Who wants to waste their time saving some extras? Being a hero is about defeating the villains. No more, no less. But what angered him the most was that Deku and that horse girl had scored higher than him, so he yelled, "Deku!" It was now late at midnight when Izuku was meeting All Might at the beach. The young man sat as Discord began to speak to him, asking him, "Do I have to be awake? Can't I sleep?" He appeared to Izuku as he was wearing a nightgown and some slippers only for the boy to flick him. "Yeah, you need to be here. All Might said this was important, so I need you up and running since you're my mentor." The chaos being groaned as he nodded before standing on the teen's shoulder. Izuku heard shuffling in the distance as he saw 2 figures approaching. The first one was All Might, or as he came to know him, Tashinori Yagi. The other one was a petite-looking girl with a slim figure. She had purple hair, with amethyst eyes. The most striking feature about her was her earlobes, which had earphone plugs from them. He guessed since he brought this girl with him, it wasn't to expand his social circle, but this was Tashinori introducing him to his successor. The boy smiled as he saw All Might and bowed, saying, "Hello, sensei." The old hero smiled as he replied to the boy. The boy then added, "I presume this is your..." The man nodded his head as he introduced his successor. "Yes, I would like to introduce you to my successor, Kyoka Jiro. The young lady has really worked hard to earn one for all. The lady has cleared an entire forest for trash of all sizes and shapes." The girl looked at him and said, "What's up, dude? How's training going with the Lord of Doom and Destruction himself?" The boy was shocked that she knew his secret since it was very protected. He glared at All Might, who simply said, "It kinda slipped out." "Never mind if I know about your secret, You should know about mine, but please don't tell anyone. You know how the government could become a little bit excitable. The girl nodded as she understood that if the secret came out it would him the world's biggest lab rat. All Might shook his head saying, in any case, I'm here to congratulate you on passing the entrance exam with such skills. You came a far way from the tiny scrawny boy that I met on the rooftop to a person who can crush metal with his bare hands like tossing away a soda can. The boy smiled as Discord yawned with Kyoka copying his action as he said, thank you, Yagi-sensei. You don't know how much that means to me. All Might chuckled warmly at how the boy looked up to him, before remembering he came here for a reason. Young Midoriya, I actually came here to ask for your assistance in young Jiro's training. The boy looked shocked but nodded. I tried to help and gave her advice before she went to the exam, but it didn't work out as I planned, and there might have been some injuries. The man then flinched as the girl poked him with her earphone jacks saying, destroying my arms aren't some injuries. The boy decided to ignore this as he asked, so what was the advice? Maybe I can build something from there. The girl blushed as she turned her face away, remembering how embarrassing his advice was for a girl like herself. The man then said, I told her to clench your butt cheeks and yell smash from the depth of your heart before she went to the exams. This caused both Izuku and Discord to stare blankly for a moment before doubling over with laughter as Izuku said through laughs, alright, that's funny. Yagi-sensei, now seriously what did you say to her? The boy noticed the sheepish look the older man was holding as he said, oh my goodness, you told her that, didn't you? He laughed for a bit more before Discord poked him telling him that a scary aurora is present. He looked at Kyoka only for her to emit a scary aurora. He saw once Pony emit when he accidentally pulled her tail. He gulped as he said, well, can I ask you how do you feel when you use your quirk? How does it interfere with your regular quirk? How does it affect your body? How? Kyoka lost him at the third question before poking him, so she said, I think I feel like I using an electric power plant. My regular quirk became stronger, for example, I usually burst amplified versions of my heartbeat through a speaker. Now, I can emit it through my earphone jacks, though it can only stun them for a moment. Okay, now regarding One for All, I need you to focus on activating it now, and try to do it all over your body, and decrease the power. The girl nodded her head as she began to imagine the power plant supplying an entire concert with energy, and she began to glow with purple lighting. She grunted a little before saying, that's much like it. I think I feel better now. All Might interested asked, how much do you think you can handle right now, young Kyoka? The girl replied by saying, I think I can handle about 5% right now. The old hero smiled and said, I couldn't ask for any more. Izuku asked them, All Might, why didn't you ask the spirits that usually accompany you? I mean they must know about One for All. The blonde man was shocked as he said, what spirits, young Midoriya? The ones that were with you, and now are connected to Jiro. This caused the girl to say, wonderful, I'm haunted right now by ghosts. All Might came up with an explanation, I think those are the vestiges of One for All that are with you, young Jiro, so there's no need to worry about them hurting you. The girl gave him a skeptical look before nodding and saying, well, I guess I need to go home before my mom wakes up and notices that I'm gone. She began to wake away with Izuku following her lead, leaving All Might to stand alone asking, what about me? 2 days later, Izuku was now standing in front of the dorms. During the last 2 days, he and Discord trained his reality alerting abilities for about 16 hours a day. Discord told him that since he already mastered most of his powers, he got the gist of it quickly. He looked around only to see another boy waiting in front of the dorms. The boy was a well-built person with multicolored hair, one side red with one side white. The boy looked at him with a cold expression that made chills run through Izuku's spine. This made Izuku quickly snap his fingers as his boxes grew legs and began to march after him, leaving the now baffled boy behind. Once he arrived at his room, he began to work on it, putting on posters, arranging clothes, and setting his table. He promptly began to put some security measures inside his room. Using his chaos powers, he began to arrange his room, making an endless stairwell here, a volcano there appearing from the ceiling that drips lava into a pool, a bunch of man-eating zombies inside a cage was prompted, in some place, Multiple doors led to many different places, a chair made from clouds, a portal on the ground with a portal above it that causes the user to fall to no end, a small petting zoo. And lastly, a waiting room that looks like an underwater aquarium, and a huge forest maze with glowing eyes in it for intruders. He walked from inside his room, leaving it without attendants. He needed to put some more KNKS for the room to recognize intruders and guests, but he didn't think it was necessary, right? He walked out of the room not noticing a yellow caterpillar walking inside it. He walked outside only to be greeted by a new face. The new person was a girl who had quite a mature physique. She had cat-like eyes in addition to hair being tied in a spiky ponytail. The girl was standing beside a moving truck full of boxes, causing Discord to say, "Huh, she really went plus ultra, bringing all of her stuff here. Does she know that the room is small? I mean, we were able to do all our stuff with reality and dimension manipulation." The girl looked in his direction before coming over and saying, "Good morning, my name is Momo Yaoyorozu. It's a pleasure to meet you." The boy smiled back at her as he said, "The pleasure's all mine, Yaoyorozu. My name is Izuku Midoriya. Do you need help with your stuff?" The girl blushed a little before looking away and saying, "If it's no problem." The boy smiled and snapped his fingers, making the boxes grow legs, as they began to unpack themselves, manually shocking the girl. She looked at him and asked, "What is your quirk, Midoriya?" The boy waved his hand saying, "I'll tell you later. It's a secret for now." He then looked at all of the stuff being unloaded and he said, "Are you sure your room can fit all these things? I'm sure the room is quite small for these things." The girl frowned, but the boy said, "I have an idea." They walked inside the dorms and they were greeted by the boy from before who said, "Hello, Yaoyorozu. It's nice seeing you again." The girl bowed as she said, "Hey, Todoroki. It's nice to see that you passed the recommendation test." The boy simply nodded before saying to Izuku, "Are you also a recommendation student?" The boy shook his head before saying, "No, I'm a regular student, but they said in my results that I need to come here in 2 days, so I packed and came here as soon as I can." The boy nodded before asking, "Have any of you seen our homeroom teacher?" The two shook their heads as Todoroki said, "Weird, he said he was going to inspect our rooms. When he finished mine, he went to Midoriya's room." This caused the boy's eyes to go side as he yelled, "He did what?" Izuku began to run to his room with the other two right on his tail, wondering what caused him to be so afraid. Once the boy reached his room, he opened the door, revealing a swirling portal that shocked the two. The boy then put his inside the portal and yanked something. It yanked a man with long black hair. He had a tired expression on his face and seemed like he has been lost for weeks on end. On his neck was a gray scarf and he was holding a coconut. The man looked at the green-haired boy and growled, "What the heck is that?" "My room. You did say in the letter we can decorate as we want." Izuku said, only for the man's eyes to glow red, but he noticed that his power has no effect on the boy nor the hell room he just escaped. He sighed saying, "Fine, but why was there a maze full of monsters?" The boy chuckled saying, "To throw off intruders." Logical enough. Now, I need go to start preparing training for lost time. I've been lost in there for about 3 weeks. He was then cut off by Todoroki saying, "It's been only 15 minutes. Peachy, the time is distorted in there." He then walked. But he then added, "Yaoyorozu, I want to your room when you're finished." He looked at his coconut and said, "Let's go, Emmy." Both of the students then looked at Izuku, whose hand was glowing in front of the room. "Good, now if anyone enters the room with hostile intentions, they will enter the maze." He looked only to see two confused and bewildered expressions. "I can guess I have to explain my power now." The two weakly nodded their heads. "Well, my power is called chaos. In simple terms, it's a reality manipulation power. It only activated recently." The two nodded, before Momo said, "Were you going to use your power to expand my room?" The boy nodded, but then Momo did something that shocked both boys as she lifted her shirt, making them both look away. Her stomach began to glow as a sketch came out of it with the girl saying, "This is a blueprint for how big I want the room, and thank you." The boy took the blueprint saying, "No problem." He looked at the blueprint and his eyes bugged out saying, "Holy moly, that's seriously huge." The girl blushed a little as she said, Well, I'd thought the rooms would be bigger, and I don't want to part with my stuff. I need them all. The boy nodded as he then went and began working on her room. After finishing with Momo, he went to the living room and saw Todoroki sitting and watching the TV, so he asked him, "I'm going out to meet the principal, do you want me to bring you something?" The boy looked at him and said coldly, "No thank you." Izuku then asked, "Are you sure? I mean, I can bring something like chocolates, sweets, udon, soba." He was cut off by Todoroki appearing in front of him saying, "I would really like it if you brought me soba, preferably cold." The boy nodded his head and said, "Okay." He walked to the school as he looked at the principal's face, but a hand caught him. He looked only to see his homeroom teacher who said, "This way, problem child." He walked with the man as the man told him, "You know, I was half tempted to expel when I entered the maze from the first 5 days, then I was impressed that you set up such a trap for anyone who enters your room." They walked in silence till they reached the principal's room. The boy entered while the man prayed for him. Once he entered the room, he was greeted by the rat man who said, "Am I a rat, a dog, or a bear? That's not important, since I'm the principal. I always wanted to meet you, Izuku Midoriya." The boy looked at him as he said, "You wanted to meet me? I really don't know why. I'm not that interested in the first place." The boy chuckled awkwardly as he rubbed the back of his head. Nizu shook his head saying, "I disagree with Midoriya. You're the most interesting person I ever met. You have the power of a literal god between your hands." He clapped his hands together as he said, "I don't want to keep you here for too long, so I brought you here to tell you that I want you to be my personal student." This caused the boy's eyes to widen with happiness as the principal wanted him to be his personal student. Nizu then said, "Now, I'm sure you're happy and all, but I need you to go. And next time you come here I want to talk to the being that calls himself Discord." The boy walked out, saw his homeroom teacher waiting for him, and asked him, "What did the demon rat want from you?" "He wanted me to be his personal student." The man's eyes went wide from fear as he said in a tired tone, "I don't get paid enough for this sheet." The man walked away sighing and talking to himself, leaving Izuku confused as to why he was sad. The boy merely shrugged as he went and bought some soba for Todoroki, and walked to the dorms. In the next few days, more students began to drain into the dorms, whether be it 1A or 1B. Momo then set up a meeting between both classes at the end of the week, so both classes can meet each other and mingle. The room in Alliance Height A. The room was full of students from both classes as they talked with each other. Izuku meanwhile brought a piñata from his room which started to give candy to whoever it passed by. The boy went and hugged his girlfriend who hugged back. Inside the room, all the students gathered in a circle as Momo spoke. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu, and I set up this meeting so both classes can meet each other, and so that we can have a nice relationship between both classes." She looked at everyone and said, "Please everyone introduce yourself, your quirk, and whatever you like." The girl then said, "I'll begin. As I said, my name is Momo Yaoyorozu. My quirk is creation, which allows me to turn lipids in my body into non-organic material as long as I know their chemical structure and formula. I like reading romance novels and drinking tea." The girl finished with a blush as she got a whistle from a green-haired girl with sharp teeth. Said girl stood up and said, "I'll go now. My name is Setsuna Tokage, and my quirk is Lizard Tail Splitter, which allows me to split my body into multiple pieces. I really dinosaurs." She then looked at Todoroki, and sent her head flying to him in front of his face saying, "And cute boys too." This comment made a couple of girls blush, but Shoto merely blinked as he stood up saying, "My name is Shoto Todoroki, my quirk is half cold, half hot, but I only use my mother's quirk." This caused him to earn a couple of weird looks, and I really like soba. He finished as a boy with blonde hair wearing a smug expression stood up. The boy introduced himself, "Greetings my fellow 1B comrades and 1A filth." This caused a couple of eyebrows to be raised as the boy carried on, "My name is Nito Monoma, and my quirk is copy, which allows me to copy the quirk of anyone as long as it isn't a mutation type and use it for 5 minutes, however, I can't use more than one at a time. I like to play chess in my free time." A pink girl with horns then stood up and said, "My name is Mina Ashido, and my quirk is acid, which is self-explanatory, and I like to dance and party. If anyone I can teach, she said looking at Izuku, who Pony immediately hugged to mark him as her one. The pink girl silently apologized and looked somewhere else. She was followed by a boy with red hair and sharp teeth. My name is Jiro Kirishima, and my quirk is hardening, which allows me to harden any part of my body. I like all things manly. He was startled when someone yelled, "What? You're just like me. That's so manly. My name is Tetsu, but you guys can call me Tetsu," someone then said quietly, as if I was going to say your full name every time I see you. The silver-haired boy ignored this as he carried on. My quirk is steel, which allows me to turn my body into steel, and like Kirishima, I love all things manly. The redhead cried, "That's really manly, bro." This caused Tetsu to also cry, "I know, bro." One girl wasn't amused by the show as she said, "So they're multiplying now? Peachy." She had orange hair which was tied in a sideways ponytail. "Alright, my name is Itsuka Kendo, and my quirk is Big Fist. That allows me to increase the size of my fist and with it my strength, and I like motorcycles and coffee in the morning." This caused Tetsu to comment, "She is addicted to it." The girl mock gasped at the accusation. A boy with yellowish-green skin and mandibles stood up from his seat and said, "My name is Taguru Kamakiri, and my quirk is razor sharp, which allows me to create sharp blades from my body. I like swordsmanship and bug collecting." He went to sit down, but he then added, "Don't open the bugs enclosures in my room unless you want the dorms to be infested with bugs." Kyoka, who was sitting beside Momo, then introduced herself. "Hey, my name is Kyoka Jiro. My quicker is earphone jack. Not impressive, I know, but recently I found out that other than listening and emitting my heartbeat, I can use it to strengthen my body, increasing my speed and strength. I like punk rock music." The introductions continued to follow, and new faces arrived late to the gathering such as Tenya Ida, Ochako Uraraka, Denki Kaminari, and Koji Kuda from 1A, and Ibra Shiozaki, Rin Hiryu, Manga Fukudashi, and Juzo Hananuki from 1B. Finally, it reached Pony, who said, "I'm Pony Tsunatori, and I'm an exchange student from America. I came here recently, but I learned the language thanks to my boyfriend Izuku." The mentioned boy blushed. "My quirk is horn cannon, which allows me to launch the horns in my head and control at least 3 pairs of them with my mind. I like manga and anime." Izuku, who had his blush diminished, said, "My name is Izuku Midoriya, and my quirk, so to speak, is chaos, which is in reality is a reality manipulation power. I sense something I like to dub as chaos energy, which I absorb, and then use it in different forms." He was cut off by a girl who had silver hair who introduced herself as Reiko Yanagi. "What happens if there isn't chaos? Does that mean you're quirkless?" The boy shook his head as he explained, "I used to think the same thing, but I couldn't any further from the truth. Chaos is something primal in the world, for before there was even order, chaos existed. Even when the world as we know it dies, I still have energy." This caused a few raised eyebrows as Ibra asked, "Do you mean that your quirk makes you immortal?" The boy chuckled, "I don't like to think about that." Pony hugged her boyfriend, knowing that this was a sensitive subject for him since he learned the fact that he may outlive all his loved ones, but she made a deal with him to make her immortal like he was. Ibra, noticing how sad he suddenly became, apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, Midoriya. It must be a real sensitive thing." The boy waved his hand saying, "No problem. I already got past that, but it still feels funny. However, I like quirk analysis." Izuku's eyebrows then began to twitch as he felt like someone was in his room. He then remembered that he saw his neighbor looking funny at his room before he left for the meeting when he said he was going to see his girlfriend. He opened a viewing portal to the maze and saw the grape-haired boy running away from a bunch of dinosaurs he put earlier in the maze. He laughed at him while the others looked and began to laugh with him. Finally, Discord appeared on his shoulder and said, "He's been there for a couple of hours now. I bet he lived inside it for about 1 year. Get him out from there." Everyone was amazed at the creature that was sitting on Izuku's shoulder except Pony. Izuku created a small portal, grabbing Mineta, who looked around like a madman. "What the hell is your room? It's like a nightmare." I entered to see if your girlfriend gave me any of her stuff, but ended inside a maze filled with man-eating monsters. The great boy looked at Izuku, who seemed to be angry. The green-haired boy then shoved a ball of chaos energy inside the boy. The smaller boy began to spasm before he finally passed out from the pain. Izuku then stood up and grabbed Pony's hand. He looked at everyone and said, "Goodbye, I going on my date with Pony now." He walked out the girl, but then the lizard girl followed him shouting, "Hey, I want my own dinosaur. Can you make me one before you go?" Kyoka then said, "I'm grateful that I'm not in the same dorms with her, cause cleaning after that thing would be a nightmare." This didn't help the 1B students, who looked at the scene with dumbfounded expressions on their faces. Chapter text. Disclaimer: I don't own My Hero Academia. All rights for it belong to Kohei Horikoshi. I also don't own My Little Pony. Izuku's fun date. Both Izuku and Pony were walking away from the school as they both got permission from their respective homeroom teachers a day before to go on their date. Of course, Izuku had to give Class 1B's resident lizard girl a small dinosaur egg that she wanted, and he told her that he made the being inside it tame. Pony looked at him and giggled, "You know, Izuku, you shouldn't have given Setsuna that raptor. I'm sure he'll make a huge mess in 1B's dorms, and we'll have to join her in cleaning after it." Izuku chuckled as he said, "Well, it seems that this is your problem, not mine." Izuku jumped as he screamed in pain. He looked and saw a horn on his back. He took the horn out and said, "That hurts. Why did you do that?" Pony just smiled as she said, "I don't have the slightest idea what he's talking about, Zuzu." She ran away from him to his house. He said that their date will begin from here. Once she arrived, she knocked on the door only for his mom to open it and say, "Pony sweetie, it's a pleasure to see you. What are you doing here? I thought that you and Izuku were on a date." The girl nodded as she said, "Izuku said that our date will begin from here. I don't know how though." Izuku then came barreling through the door as he smashed into Pony, sending both toppling to the ground. He opened his eyes only to see her above him as she smiled and kissed him on the lips. His mother cleared her throat saying, "As much as I love this show of affection, you're making me feel old." Both stood up with blushes on their faces as Izuku went to the door of his room and tapped on it 3 times. He looked at Pony and said, "Would you like to do the honors?" The girl, curious, walked over to the door and opened it, seeing what was on the other side, and she was thrilled. On the other side of the door was an American street. The girl looked at her boyfriend as she jumped in happiness, saying, "Izuku, are you really taking me on a date to America?" The boy nodded his head as he said, "That's right, my dear Pony." The girl jumped excitedly as she said, "Can I go see my mommy? She said she wanted to talk with you if we ever visited the USA." The boy began to sweat bullets because to him Pony's mom, cow lady, was terrifying as hell. They usually talked to her with Pony on the phone, but he couldn't help but feel that the woman wanted to skin him alive for dating her daughter. The boy gulped as he gave her a shaky thumbs up. They then walked through the door connecting to the other side as Izuku's mom said in astonishment, "Doors that lead to other countries. Can't say I expected that, but what can I do?" "Well, it's time to go back to training, I presume." The couple began to walk through the streets with Pony telling him every little thing about every corner in her country, with Izuku mentally saying, "She's really excited about our date. I'll give her that." The girl asked him as they walked through a park, "Where are we going, Izuku? You still haven't told me, what did you plan for today?" The girl began to poke playfully him in the cheek while the boy chuckled as he detached his fingers and began to tickle in her stomach as he knew that she was ticklish. The girl doubled over as she laughed, unable to control herself on the soft grass of the park. Izuku eventually stopped as he said, "Only a little bit more. I promise that you'll be going to love it." The girl smiled as she said, "I always believe you, Izuku." She stood up as she grabbed his hand, and they walked together while she held his hand and leaned toward him. They walked for a bit more before reaching a place that Pony only read about in reviews. "Izuku, is that Michael's Quirk Coffee Cafe? The only cafe in the world that allows Quirk usage." She looked at her boyfriend, who smiled at her as she began to jump in happiness as she said, "But that place is expensive. How were you able to book a date there?" The boy chuckled as he said, "Well, I booked it 4 months ago. I wanted our first date to be someplace you really like, so I might have paid a fortune for it." The girl grabbed his face, kissing him as he mentally said, "Totally worth every penny." They both entered it and were escorted to their seat, where Pony was looking around in awe as Izuku leaned in and said, "If you keep looking at the place like that, people will think that you never entered a coffee shop in your life. Cool your jets a little." The girl blushed a little as she said, "I can't help it. This place is like a dream that every girl from Texas wishes to go to on her date. I mean, I still couldn't believe you booked a place for us. It's really astounding." The boy chuckled as he said, "Well, you're here now, so stop acting like that, or you'll never let me bring you to a high-class place like this ever again." The girl mock gasped as she then broke into a fit of giggles. The boy then saw a waiter stand up to them and say, "Hello, my name is John, how can I be of service to you and the lovely lady tonight?" Izuku smiled as he said, "I want a strawberry milkshake with 2 small cakes and a croissant, while my girlfriend here wants a mango smoothie with a cup of coffee to the side. Add to that a small cake." He was poked in the side. "I mean a big slice of cake with a strawberry and blueberry crepe on the side." The man bowed as he went to deliver the order as Izuku rubbed his assaulted spot. He looked at his girlfriend and said, "You know you didn't have to hit me so hard." He then let a tear roll down his cheek. The girl rolled her eyes at his antics and said, "Come on, Zuzu, you know that I wouldn't hurt you." She paused for a moment and then added, "Much?" This shocked the boy, but he can only respond to her by laughing a little as he knew deep down that she doesn't mean it. At least, he hoped that she didn't mean it. Izuku looked to his side as Discord appeared on his shoulder. "Look at this place, it's even fancier than its website makes it appear." He summoned a monocle on his eye as he added, "You seriously pulled all the stunts for this, didn't, Izuku?" He bowed to Izuku as he said, "You outdone me. I have to admit that you went all out beyond my expectations, but you're still missing something." Discord smiled as Izuku rolled his eyes, knowing what the ex-Lord of Chaos wanted. He told him that he wanted him on the first date to make magic spells to turn the tea and coffee into singing versions of themselves. "No, I won't use my powers to turn tea, coffee, and sugar into singing versions of themselves." Discord summoned another version of himself and another, followed by another, as they all began to beg him. Izuku hated Discord's ability to use minor powers such as levitation, multiplication, and the ability to disconnect his body. Izuku was snapped from his thoughts when a waiter came up to him and asked, "Can you please stop using your quirk? It's disturbing the guests." Izuku's brows furrowed as he said, "I'm sure this place allows quirk usage." The waiter forced a smile as he replied, "As long as it doesn't annoy the other customers." Izuku frowned as he added, "But I can't help it. This part of my quirk," he pointed to Discord, "is sentient, so I can't control it that much on what it does and doesn't." The waiter's fake smile depended as he said something that Izuku didn't hear much, but he frowned back when he said, "All right, just keep it down. People are trying to enjoy themselves." Izuku nodded his head as the waiter went away. Izuku said, "What an unpleasant person." Pony nudged him, "Come on, Zuzu, I'm sure he was just trying to do his job. You know how hard it is these days to find a paying job." She put a finger to her chin. "I remember when I was 13 I worked at a supermarket. It was really frustrating how customers would come up to me crying and complaining about the smallest of details that weren't even my responsibility. Sometimes I really just wanted to bash their heads in." Izuku and Discord both sweat dropped as the former said, "You didn't like that place, did you, Pony?" The girl nodded her head in affirmation, as Izuku made a mental note not to get on her bad side ever. She asked him, "What about you, Izuku? Did you ever work somewhere before you?" The boy shook his head, as he remembered his quirkless days, or rather his powerless days, since he is technically still quirkless, but with chaos powers to level the playing field this time around. Not a lot of people hire quirkless people to work, and if they do, they usually will fault them for anything and kick them out at the first chance they had. He looked at Pony's eyes, who started to fill with tears as he said, "But that doesn't mean I'm sad or bothered by that." The horse girl smiled slightly but still felt bad. She used to hear about quirkless people and their trouble outside of America, but she always thought that they were being exaggerated given that her country gave quirkless people the same rights as quirked, and it was a serious crime to discriminate against them so naturally. She thought that it is the same in other countries, But sadly the reality is a beach that loves to smash her expectations into a million tiny pieces because the day she arrived in Japan, she saw the truth. She saw a bald old man getting kicked by a store owner who yelled at him to never come back because he was quirkless. When she asked if he was okay, he shrugged saying that he got used to it at this point, and for her not to bother herself with him since she's a foreigner and they'd pick her. I'm sorry, Izuku, but I just hate that you used to be treated badly for something you can't even control. The boy smiled at her words as he said, well now don't feel bad. I mean it's a thing in the past now, and we're here to enjoy our date not to cry, so let's do that. She detached his finger as they went and began to tickle her in her stomach causing her to laugh uncontrollably for the second time this evening. When he stopped, he noticed some patrons frowning at them, but he shrugged as he looked at Pony who said, you know Setsuna gonna be really mad that you can do her thing. Izuku nodded his head understanding where Pony was coming from after all. It's not every day that someone manages to become the Lord of Chaos's apprentice or in Izuku's case forced apprentice since he didn't have a say in this. Discord rolled his eyes from the side. I tried to possess your body, big deal. Get over it already. I mean I'm already over it. This caused a tick mark to appear on Izuku's forehead as he said, that's because you weren't the one being possessed, I was. The two began to argue back and forth with Pony laughing at them before she decided to intervene. I'm wondering if you two share the same body, does that mean you two share thoughts? Both of them nodded with Pony gaining a smirk. So, Discord, does Zuzu ever have perverted ideas about me? The ex-Lord of Chaos ever so happy to cause chaos smiled as he opened his mouth to reply before Izuku slammed both his hands on him causing him to puff out of existence as his face held a very heavy blush making Pony laugh at him as she said, that's all I need to know. This made green-haired boy's head heat up like a lobster thrown in boiled water so he tried to defend himself, but the universe had another thing to disturb him. Their waiter came holding their food as he set it down on the table and said with a smile that seemed a little too fake for Izuku, enjoy. The green-haired boy took his croissants and examined them before he bit down on them enjoying the taste. Pony did the same as she took a bite out of her cake and smiled saying, this is really tasty. I wish I can eat from it forever. It feels like it jumped into my mouth. Izuku laughed as he said, you know I can make it move into your mouth with my chaos magic? But it would make so much attention. The girl smiled. You can, can't you? Discord said that he wanted to make it sing and dance for me. The boy took the request for a moment and wondered if he should actually do it, but he wanted to make this date memorable for her so he said in his head, what the heck? Let's do it. He can distinctly hear Discord yell in happiness. Seriously, the guy had a serious love for all things chaotic, not that Izuku can blame him. It was his thing after all. So with a flick of his finger, the cake stood up with the crepe pieces and began to dance around along with the coffee Pony had. The horse girl could only watch in amusement. We're the tasty foods that will make you smile, and put that frown away, the cake sang as it entered her mouth making her smile. It was all happiness till a waiter came in their direction, and said with anger in his voice, are going to seize your actions or are going to kick you out of here? This caused Izuku to frown as he said, what's your problem? We're not disturbing anyone. Everyone seems to be having their own food, and we're barely making a noise. The waiter seemed to get angrier by the minute as he replied, you and this girl of yours were an annoyance the moment you came into this store, so I want you to leave. This made Izuku get angry as he was about to go and punch him in the face, but Pony stopped him. He looked at her as she shook her head signaling to him that it was not worth it, and that should leave anyway to go and meet her mother. This boy shivered as he thought about that. He grabbed Pony's hand as he walked outside the cafe while having their stuff put inside a box. He looked at the cashier as he paid them money, we're not going to give you a good review. The cashier could only smile awkwardly as this was the third time this week one of the new waiters kicked a customer for not living out of their ideals. Izuku and Pony then walked out, but Izuku then allowed the back of his shirt to snap itself. The effect was immediate, but it will be noticed later on. Pony looked at her boyfriend and said, I'm sorry Zuzu. If I didn't tell you to make the food sing, they wouldn't have kicked us out. Izuku then kissed her saying, never say that again. They wanted to kick us out from the beginning, but they used this as an excuse so they can come up on the moral high ground. The horse girl smiled as she told her boyfriend, come on Zuzu, let's go see my mom. Izuku smiled worriedly as he tried not to feel afraid of Pony's mom, but inside the cafe one of the workers there stood beside the wall, and he heard some ruckus from inside it. He put his ear to the wall to check if they had some infestation of some kind, but he didn't find anything, so he shrugged. Little did he know that inside the wall was a huge swarm of frogs was inside the walls, and in the next few days, they will attack the cafe. Izuku and Pony continued to walk together till they reached a small farm where Pony used to live here. Izuku looked at her and said, "You used to live here?" The girl nodded, but Izuku said, I thought one of the most famous pro-heroes in America will have a fancier house, but to each their own." Pony giggled. "Mom likes to live a modest. She also likes the farm life because my grandpa taught her that a person who really wants to be a hero should live a modest life so he can understand the pains of regular citizens." Izuku blinked as he found this to be very moving, then Pony added, "But mommy also hates to do taxes for big homes and buy groceries, so yeah, we live on a farm." Izuku's sweat dropped as he said, "So she's basically cheap." Pony looked at him. "Very much. At least she does charity." Izuku nodded as Discord said, "So she's cheap on her family." Izuku asked her, "Pony, how come you never told me about your dad?" The girl blinked, before a sheepish expression appeared on her face. "Well, Dad is really nice, but his appearance may be scary for some people given that he's built like a wall, but he's really a sweetheart and can cry from watching a movie. If anything, my mom is the person who wears the pants in the house." She stopped a little as she said, "Be careful, my little brothers love to cause chaos, so don't give them ammo against, or God so help I'll shove one of my horns where the sun doesn't shine." Izuku lifted his thumbs as he shivered in fear as he knew Pony meant it. Pony walked to the front door and knocked on it rapidly, but then a huge scream came. "For the love of God, if you're some of those scout girls, I'll—" The door was opened when a woman with blonde hair and cow horns stood there looking at her daughter. "Pony, sweetie." The woman hugged the teenager who was more than eager to return the huge only for the woman to separate all of a sudden. "Wait, how are you here and doesn't school start tomorrow?" Pony nodded. "Well, Mom, Izuku and I went on a date in America. Izuku teleported us here from his house to here, but we had some trouble on our date so we came here directly." The hero blinked a little before she massaged her head and said, "Okay, I can technically arrest you both for illegal quirk usage, but I'll let it slide this time." She grabbed Pony and dragged her as she said, "Tell me everything about Japan, sweetie. It's been a while since I've been there." The girl smiled as she used her horn to drag Izuku inside her home with the boy tilting his head in confusion, feeling left out. Cow Lady looked at him and said, "Well, how can I forget about you? The little punk who stole my pony's heart." She looked at her daughter. "Go bring your pa. I want to have a word with Izuku." The girl at her boyfriend, who swallowed heavily, begging her not to leave as he was seriously afraid of her mother, and the vibes she was giving him was making him feel any better. The girl simply laughed at him as she went away to bring her father. Cow Lady began to circle him, but Izuku felt like he was in the ocean with a shark waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She asked him, "So you're the big shot that took my girl's heart? I don't see anything impressive about you." She eyed him up and down, shaking her head. "What does she see in you?" Discord popped on his shoulder with a small bowl of popcorn. "Well, it all goes back to the fact that he wasn't one of the people who tried to trick your daughter to go shady places with him. The shadiest place he took her to is the beach that they cleaned together." Izuku grabbed him and began to shake him as he asked, "Whose side are you on?" The heroine then slammed her foot into the ground as she shifted into her Minotaur mode and grabbed the boy who squeaked, asking him, "What are your intentions with my daughter? And you better be honest with me, because if you thought Pony's horns are painful, wait till I use you for target practice with mine. I just want to make her happy. I don't want anything other than that." She eyed him for a moment as she asked, "Are you sure?" The boy nodded fearfully, but suddenly she let him down as she hugged him, saying, "Welcome to the family, kid. And from now on I'm Ma." Izuku stood there as he said quietly, "What the F just happened here?" Cow Lady heard him as she laughed at him. Her daughter told her that her boyfriend was a bundle of nerves, but she didn't think he was so funny to toy with. The boy literally melted between her hands. She looked over the corner to see her husband still crying that his daughter is there. "Seriously, Harold, how can someone like you be such a crybaby? Man up for once." The man looked at her and said, "I'm just happy that I saw my baby girl." Harold was a 6 feet man with an ox head and a serious expression etched into his face. He had huge horns on his head. His entire body was muscled from working on the farm, from planting to taking care of the animals, but his appearance was a contrast to his behavior. The man was soft-hearted, and he can cry from watching a sad commercial. Cow Lady said, "Well, you have to meet your daughter's boyfriend." Suddenly a huge ruckus was heard from the second floor of their house as 2 boys came crumbling down. "Pony has a boyfriend? Who in their right mind would want to date her?" The girl frowned as her brothers snickered at her. Meanwhile, Izuku was standing on the side, confused about what he should do. Discord then appeared and said, "I suggest we book it with her." Izuku replied, "I think that they might chase me to Japan, and I don't want to risk it honestly." The ex-Lord of Chaos nodded as he also felt confused. Pony saw her boyfriend standing there not understanding what was happening. She went and grabbed him saying, "Izuku, this is my family," she said, pointing to everyone. "This pa." The huge man smiled at him, which Izuku found unsettling given his scary appearance, but he couldn't judge people on their appearance. "My ma," she said, pointing to Cow Lady. "I hope she didn't mess with you too much. It's kinda her thing to scare people. That's why we put a scarecrow that looks like her." This caused the woman to frown. Pony then took an unimpressed look as she pointed to the 2 boys to the side saying, "And these dorks are my younger twin brothers John and Jack." The 2 frowned at the less than respectful introduction as they said, "Hey, at least we didn't spend most of our childhood watching manga hoping for it to become one day real." Pony then sent 2 of her horns to skewer her brothers, who ran away. The rest of the time at her family's home was as eventful. He talked with her dad and found that the guy was originally Japanese, but he changed his name when came from Japan to merge better with the American society. Pony's mother tried to scare him some more, but Pony always stopped her. Her brothers begged him to give him some juice on their older sister, but remembering her threat, he wisely didn't say anything. In the end, Izuku used Pony's room to go back to his room in Japan. They walked to UA as they went to the dorms so they won't miss the curfew. Izuku looked at Pony, who was smiling happily as she leaned her head against his arm. He asked her, "Did you like our date?" The girl looked at him smiling. "Of course, it's the best thing ever. You also got to meet my family, and my parents think that you're so cool, so that's something." The boy chuckled. "Well, I can't say I didn't like them, but your mom is seriously scary." The girl laughed at him as she said, "Well, look at the bright side, she didn't chase outside the house like the last boy I brought over." Izuku laughed for a moment before his head registered her words, and felt a shiver of fear run down his spine. Izuku walked to her dorms. The moment they entered, they saw Setsuna snuggling with a baby raptor that was wearing a diaper of all things. Kendo looked at Izuku and Pony. The girl quickly went to Izuku saying, "Why did you give her this?" The boy chuckled as he said, "She asked nicely." The orange-haired girl tried to grab him, but he disconnected his body, causing Tokage to yell, "Hey, that's my thing." Kendo shook her head. "No, Izuku, I want you to tell Setsuna to give you the baby raptor. This thing will cause a huge mess." She looked at the girl who was holding the baby dinosaur tightly like she was holding her own flesh and blood. The boy walked away as he said, "Sorry, but that sounds like a you problem." He looked at Pony and kissed her on the cheek. Itsuka tried to lunge at him, but he jumped. "See you tomorrow, my little pony." He ran away as Kendo followed him, demanding he come back here and face her like a man. Tokage looked at her and gave her the baby dinosaur, saying, "It's your time to watch over Rodney." The horse girl could only look at the baby dinosaur, which cooed at her, causing the girl's heart to flutter. Maybe it won't be so bad. She looked only to see a set-off Itsuka coming back from her failed attempt to catch Izuku. The second day came, and everyone was getting ready for their first class in UA. Izuku himself was extremely excited. He was bouncing from side to side, causing small tremors of reality shift to occur. Discord appeared and whacked him on the head. "Enough. I think you almost changed the entire history of the Middle East and Russia during your excitement tremors." The boy nodded as he sheepishly focused to turn everything back to normal. Once it was done, he went to 1B dorms to take Pony to her first class for the day. When he knocked on the door, he was stunned when a missile of orange hair collided with him. He looked up to see Kendo with a smirk on her face as she held him with her giant hands. "You can't escape now, can you?" The boy simply phased through her hands, causing her smirk to fall as she said, "DMN it. This is seriously cheating." Then Izuku inflated his hands, causing a cloud of despair to appear on Kendo. "Now I'm never going to stand out." Izuku laughed. "It's nice to see you too, Kendo." The girl tried to smile, but couldn't as she said, "Please take that dinosaur back. Tokage is forcing us to take care of it and scoop away its poop." Izuku smiled as he said, "How about I make Tokage's room a habit for her pet?" The orange-haired girl smiled. "Great, do it now." "Shouldn't we wait for Tokage to come out first?" Kendo shook her head as she said, "No, do it now. Because of her, I lost all of my coffee yesterday trying to take care of her mini-monster. I want my vengeance." Izuku shrugged as he transformed the girl's room into a jungle. 3 minutes later, a scream was heard as Tokage came down looking like a mad woman. She looked at Kendo, who was laughing with Izuku standing beside her. She yelled, "That's not funny. I honestly thought that I was lost in the past if it wasn't for the instructions the nerd left me to find the door." Kendo bowed. "Consider this was vengeance for my coffee that disappeared yesterday due to your dino monster. Seriously, I had to go through an entire batch to keep up with it." Setsuna frowned. "He's a baby. He has a lot of energy." "Well now, he's inside your room in his habit. Don't worry, only you and him live there. Isn't that right, Midoriya?" The boy nodded as he saw Pony. He grabbed her hand and quickly left 1B's dorms, leaving both girls to argue. He kissed Pony as he said, "Ready for the first day of UA?" "I know I am." The boy was bouncing with excitement. He looked at the huge building that is UA. He was excited as he walked the halls where people like All Might, Endeavor, Edge Shot, Best Jeanist, and many others walked before him. Pony nodded. "I'm so happy. I can't wait to see and experience all the training that Ma went through here before she went back to the USA with Pa." Izuku nodded, remembering that the real reason Pony's father left Japan was because of her father. He fell in love with her, and he decided to live with her in her country. Both of them walked in the hallways as Izuku watched the classes. He then said, "Wow, this place is really big. I think I might get lost." Discord appeared saying, "Impossible, you have a GPS in your mind. Use it to navigate this maze." Izuku laughed at him. "It was just a metaphor. I know I can't get lost here. It would be embarrassing, to say the least. The guy trained with the Lord of Chaos, or X-Lord in your case, and All Might, the greatest hero of all time, got lost inside his hero school." Pony nodded. "Agreed. It sounds kinda pathetic when you put it that way, but smile because I know today is going to be awesome." Izuku was excited like she was on the first day, but he couldn't wonder what were they going to do, but he shrugged since he was going to know either way. He walked Pony with Pony till they reached Class 1B. He looked at her and kissed her lips saying, "Have a good day, sweetheart." The girl smiled. "You too, Zuzu, and try not to cause too much trouble." "I promise." The girl didn't seem too convinced as she said, "Discord, keep a good eye on him, and make sure he doesn't get into too much trouble." The creature appeared on his shoulder as he said, "I promise, Scout's honor." The girl nodded as she entered her classroom with Izuku left behind as he said, "I feel attacked." Discord replied, "You should." Izuku pouted, meaning, "You're an extension of me now, so that means you should take my side, not anyone else's." Discord laughed as Izuku looked at him. "Isn't that how it's supposed to work?" Discord shook his head much to Izuku's dismay as he explained, "You see, it's true that I'm only an extension of you at this point, but I also have free will. While I can't go away from you, and I'm entirely bonded to you no matter what, I can still have my own thoughts, ideas, and feelings. In other words, think of me as your personal dark shadow." Izuku hummed as he stood in front of the door of Class 1A. "Wow, I didn't notice when I dropped off Pony, but these doors are huge. I think they're made for people with giantifaction quirks like Mount Lady." Discord snorted, "Or it was made because someone was trying to compensate for something." This made Izuku's face go red as he heard Discord laugh. He entered the classroom only to be greeted by the most unholy sight. "Get your legs off the table. This is an insult to the people who were here before us, and the fine craftsmen who worked day and night to produce such fine tables." Ida stood reprimanding Bakugo, who looked like he didn't give a f at all because he didn't. The blonde boy looked at him as he said, "What did your previous school put a stick up your butt, so you think you're better than me?" Ida took a step back as he adjusted himself. "Let's start again. I'm Tenya Ida, and I'm for Sumai High." He was cut off by Bakugo, who said, "Sumai, huh? So you're an elitist. I'm gonna have fun tearing you a new one." Ida was taken by surprise as he gasped and said, "You dare threaten your own classmate? Are you sure that you should be in the hero course?" Izuku walked up to Ida and greeted him as he felt Bakugo look at him with the fury of 1,000 demons. "Hey Ida, how are you doing today?" The boy swiveled on his feet as he faced Izuku, taking both boys by shock. Ida looked at Izuku. "Midoriya, you saw the truth of this test. When everyone went running, you ran to help her. I must admit that you're the superior student." Izuku rubbed the back of his head as he laughed awkwardly at Ida's earnest behavior. Izuku then turned around as he felt someone enter the room, only to see Ochako, who was smiling at him. "Midoriya, how are you doing? Are you excited as I am for the first day?" She stopped for a bit before she asked, "And was your date with Pony last night? Was it good? Did you have fun? Did you kiss?" Izuku's sweat dropped as he said, "Well, it was fine all things considered." Discord appeared on his shoulder as he said, "He got kicked out of the cafe." He looked at his mentor as he said in annoyance, "They didn't need to learn that. Why did you tell them that?" Izuku grabbed them as he began to shake him rapidly, causing both of his friends to sweat drop at the comedic. Izuku was then slapped across the head. He looked only to see Dark Shadow, Tokoyami's quirk, above him as it said, "Hey, stop abusing him. We sentient quirks have feelings too." Izuku frowned as Discord said, "Your teacher's coming. Take your seats, you want to give him a good impression." And true to that, everyone was in their seat, as they all watched a caterpillar of sorts roll inside the room, making everyone ask themselves, is that his mood of transportation? Aizawa came out of his cocoon, and he entered his teacher mode, looking around as he nodded, "Good, you're all rational students." He then introduced himself. "For those who don't know, my name is Sho Yuta Aizawa, and I'll be your homeroom teacher for the next 3 years. He scratched his head as he said, "Now, I know this might be shocking, but I'll give you all clothes and I want to all head to the training field." He picked a sports uniform and threw it to Izuku, who caught it before he left. Izuku blinked as he held the uniform. He looked at the others and said, "Well, let's go." With that, everyone exited the classroom, not knowing the ordeal that they were about to face.